It's Friday, the 26th of June 2020, from the Live Legend Studios in Amsterdam. This is ECCM 2020. So welcome, nice that you join us here on stage. Here on stage with me is Richard van der Sanden. Richard, you're the chair of the ECCM committee. First of all, to begin with, welcome here on stage. We're going to have a nice afternoon here. Also, welcome, of course, all the people who are joining us right now. What is ECCM?
ECCM is an initiative by the three top sectors on electrochemical conversion and materials. And basically it was recognized a couple of years ago that this would be an important, let's say, technology to actually go into the energy transition and to basically use renewable electricity to convert it to the chemicals we need.
And it was only 3 years ago that we started this whole journey?
Yeah, 2017, I think, with the initiative also, which was organized by the Ministry of Economic Affairs. NWO was attached there, so the Dutch Science Foundation, and also TNO. So that actually got together with the top sectors in the Netherlands and actually started this initiative.
Great, and now we're here today with almost 500 people watching us live, and maybe a dozen of people later when the stream has ended. And we're going to have an interactive afternoon. We have a lot of speakers for you here. We have a lot of pitches. We will have a debate, a discussion here on stage. But we need you and your participation. We would highly appreciate it if you will join us. And therefore we have a separate system. It's called Mentimeter. Please pick up your phones now and go to menti.com. So www.menti.com on the browser, on your mobile phone or on your tablet. And then you have to fill out this 6-digit code. So menti.com and then 660497. And we have got a first question for you to get to know you a bit better. Where are you in the world? Where are you watching us right now? And you can fill out the place that you are. And in a few moments we will get back to the results. So Amsterdam is first, also Waddinxveen, Utrecht, but also Switzerland and Maastricht and Woerden. Please take a few moments to fill this out. And later on, you can also vote on statements we have prepared for you. And you can ask all the speakers, all the questions that you want to ask, and we will pick them out. We will use them later on. So take your time, go to menti.com, and then fill out 660497. Well, to officially open this conference and this program, we go to Emmo Meijer. He's the chair of the top sector chemistry, and he will open this on behalf of the top sectors energy, high-tech systems, materials, and chemistry. Watch Emmo Meijer.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, welcome to all colleagues from the private sector, knowledge institutes, NGOs, and government. And of course, a special welcome to our international guests and keynote speakers of today. It is my pleasure to open the third edition of the annual conference on electrochemical conversion and materials, ECCM. And I do this on behalf of the top sectors, energy, high-tech systems and materials, and chemistry. The corona crisis prompted many parties to focus on short-term solutions to mitigate the fallout of the pandemic, and this is understandable. However, on the other hand, and this will become a real challenge, we cannot afford to waste any more time to come up with solutions for a sustainable future of our society, requiring a longer-term vision and action planning. And one may even argue that the corona crisis is a trigger for it. The ECCM programming, now running for a couple of years, fits perfectly with the longer-term ambition for true sustainability. And we believe that the Netherlands is in a position to become a front-runner in Europe in the production and distribution of climate-neutral hydrogen for use as an energy carrier and in the application of green hydrogen and electrons for the production of base chemicals. All important initiatives for a green future. And the ECCM platform, coordinated by the ECCM committee, tries to materialize on this opportunity by providing input for the governmental vision on hydrogen and clean chemistry, by executing the missions defined by the top sectors, by seeking synergy between shorter-term electrolysis and system integration and longer-term electrochemical conversion. By adopting ongoing public-private partnerships that fit within the ECCM roadmap and also initiating new initiatives where needed. And maybe the most important, by creating a truly international embedded ECCM community, bringing together sectors, expertise and governments. And that's what we are here for today. In a recent vision paper submitted to the government by the Topsectors and backed by a broad consortium of industry and knowledge institutes, we recommended the government to support a national partnership in which companies from the energy-intensive industry and the manufacturing industry join forces with the knowledge institutions to give a substantial economic boost in the field of hydrogen, green chemistry and high-tech equipment. The uniqueness of that proposal is that an impressive number of parties, and I think about 50 consortia of companies, have been brought together. Of these, more than 12 consortia will take their final investment decisions in 2021 and 2022. And this illustrates that companies are ready to invest on a large scale in green hydrogen production, transport, storage, and application in fuels and chemistry. And knowledge institutions from all over the country will further develop the much needed fundamental knowledge. A clear illustration that sustainability and economy are going hand in hand is that preliminary figures show that around 60,000 full-time jobs and approximately 70 billion euros of added value can be maintained for the Dutch economy by these initiatives in the various sectors that are currently still heavily dependent on fossil energy carriers. The total impact on employment in the Netherlands is estimated at around 100,000 full-time equivalents. So we have a strong case here towards 2050. In view of all the challenges, we still face to really establish ECCM as a mature technology platform for the Netherlands. I'm convinced that new alliances between companies and institutions from different sectors are needed, and that's exactly what we want to achieve with meetings like we have today. And although we cannot network in the physical world right now, I'm really happy to kick off the very inspiring program that ECCM has to offer us today in this somewhat unusual setting. And also on behalf of Manon Jansen and Mark Hendricks, I wish you all an inspiring afternoon and thank you very much for participating in this conference. And I would now like to hand over to Richard van der Sande and Joost Hoewink in the studio. The digital floor is yours.
Thank you very much, dear Emmo, for this opening, for this welcome, for this introduction. And if you're watching this at home, you've heard Emmo Meijer. This is the right moment. There's a great momentum here to collaborate with each other. Richard, I guess you're agreeing fully with what Emmo Meijer said. You're also the director of the Dutch Institute for Fundamental Energy Research for a few days, and then you go to another part of your journey, and you are a professor at the Department of Applied Physics at the Eindhoven University of Technology in the Netherlands. This is an international conference, but well, it's just the two of us here in the studio. But we asked the people who are joining us, well, where are they joining us today? And 128 people filled it already out on Mentimeter. You can still join us. Go to menti.com and use the code 660497. So 660497. If you don't have a mobile phone or a tablet at hand and you just have your laptop screen, then you open a separate tab on your browser and go to menti.com from there. But it's better to use your mobile phone so you can see us on full screen the whole afternoon. Let's see the results. We see Delft, we see The Hague, but also Barcelona.
You see a very clear map of that it is a national initiative, of course. All the big cities basically are here on the map. But also you see indeed Cambridge, I saw also Switzerland, I saw Italy, I saw Barcelona. So apparently we also have, I think, people there who are interested in the ECCM and to actually follow. Most probably these are PhDs and postdocs, of course, which have returned home also. But it could also be the senior researchers, of course. And other companies.
I see also Hanoi, Vietnam, but also Germany, United States. So it's really international. And from wherever you are in the world, welcome here with us. Well, we hope you will enjoy this afternoon with us. It's afternoon here in Amsterdam, but it can be morning or maybe night at your place.
Yes.
We will find that out later, because we will have a discussion here with also people from China and from the United States joining us. So we will ask what time it is there, where they are. To start then the program, ECCM, it's a growing community.
Yes,
we already discussed that a bit. We have also a slide about it.
Yeah, you can see this on this slide. This is the slide which actually shows the development from the initiative which started 2017 somewhere on the Ministry of Economic Affairs. And you see, basically this is an exponential growth, I would say. We are now at something like 450 people actually registered for this national event, yearly. National event. And also if you go to the next slide, what you can also see is that, so ECCM is an initiative where basically the triple helix comes together. So it's not only about, let's say, academic research and development which needs to be done, and research, but also the companies are tightly connected to the ECCM initiative, actually reflected in the fact that they are part of the committee.
So it's academia, it's industry, but it's also governments.
Also
that's the triple
government.
helix.
Yes. And that's of course to get together the initiative, to get it going, to make sure that, let's say, in the always difficult first times, the momentum, to get the momentum, that you have to bring these three parties together. And I think we are pretty well and successful in that, showing by the growing number, of course, which is attending this annual conference.
It's a growing number, and it's also a really diverse group.
Yes,
so that's
now you can see this in this pie chart, where you can see that academia is about 40%. You have companies and you have government, which actually all have. This is from the subscription to this event, and you see that it is more or less. Well distributed, I would say. It's not only about academic research, but it is certainly also about, let's say, these technology developments which are necessary and the connection with the industries, working together in a network. That's very important.
And it's very important, and it can lead to great successes. We will talk about that later. Go to the next Mentimeter question, because I would like you to answer this. What comes to mind when you think of ECCM? So this is the Dutch Conference on Electrochemical Conversion and Materials. But what comes to mind? And already 29 people responded to that question. So we see a low cost of electrons, hydrogen, future, move beyond fossil fuels, sustainability.
Yes.
Sounds great.
Yeah, it's all about the energy transition, of course. That's of course the driver, reducing, let's say, CO2 in the atmosphere. But for that, we have to go to a totally renewable energy-driven society, I would say. And there are important technologies also to make our, let's say, our feedstock, plastics and that kind of stuff, but also our future fuels, synthetic fuels, on which we can actually be mobile, for instance, by flight. But especially that's actually where the ECCM initiative aims for, is producing hydrogen on a large scale. It's not only hydrogen, because I think if you look further down the line, basically the direct electrochemical conversion is also essential, going from base molecules towards more complex products.
So there's more in life than hydrogen only, but we see in the answers, we see hydrogen a lot of times, but also someone is answering Richard. What comes to mind? Solar cells, transition. I saw the word future a lot of times. The future starts now.
Right.
I like that, but also connections. That's what we talked about. That's the network, the very strong network we have here, based in the Netherlands.
And don't forget, actually, also strengthening, let's say, the knowledge base. I think ECCM was really also, let's say, erected from the need for that, because, we were basically a little bit addicted to, let's say, the Dutch gas. And so we had to learn the trick again. and actually develop, let's say, the technologies to go from a renewable energy towards chemistry.
Do you think that because we had such vast amount of gas flowing through the pipes each year, that made us a bit lazy in doing research on all the other fields?
Oh, not lazy in research, I would say, but maybe not in the right topics. So I think that was one of the realizations, I think, 3 or 4 years ago. Hey, we need to get the things going and we need to start working again, broaden the knowledge base and get actually pilots and demonstrators, but also new developments, let's say, going.
Yeah. Okay, back to you at home. Maybe you are in your private office or in your home office. Maybe you are outside in your garden because the weather is very nice. Maybe you are in your bedroom because you don't have an office at home. Maybe, well, wherever you are, look at your screen, at your mobile phone or your tablet, because we haven't got another Mentimeter question for you coming up. And this is one where you can, well, take some time to think about the answer. What should we prioritize for the energy transition? And make up your mind. There are a few things you can choose from. We will continue talking about ECCM, about the initiative, and in a few moments we will get back to your answers. So can we have the next slide for Richard, please? And there it is. So what happened in the last year?
Yes, I think in the last year a lot of developments actually took place again. So we set up, let's say, to strengthen the knowledge base, and in collaboration with, let's say, industry also, we established a tenure track call, which was actually also finished this year, and which we will see in the afternoon in this program, let's say, the 6 pitches of these tenure trackers. Yeah. And that's actually one of the things. The other thing is that there is, together with the Ministry of Economic Affairs, within the Dutch science agenda, there was a call opened for storage and conversion from electricity or from renewable energy to chemistry. And again, this is to strengthen this knowledge base. But it's not all about, let's say, academic research, as we will see in a moment, because there are also big initiatives on field labs and on demonstrators and on, let's say, I think, labs which have been established within the applied research organizations. We also started a big release consortium where indeed, this is an example of such a network where, let's say, the demanding parties, the industries, work together in close proximity with researchers to actually establish a couple of goals. Paulien Herder will explain this a little bit further.
So it looks like it was a very effective year. Yes. And then there's also a thing like the graduate school.
Yes, the graduate school was also, again, to strengthen this knowledge base. That's the next slide, where actually, about 50 participants came together, because it was, again, the realization, you know, the field of electrochemistry was actually declining. And with this, we actually are boosting it again, hopefully also to appoint, let's say, professors again, who actually can actually make the new workforce for the future. Yeah. And also, of course, for the Polytech, let's say, universities. Yeah. It's not only universities, but also the Polytech.
Yeah. It's the whole scope of academia and, of course, also past academia. And then to summarize, there are a few field labs based in the Netherlands and abroad. We see them here on the screen.
Yes, here you see the example of the Faraday lab, which actually started in Pette, and it deals with, of course, electrolysis, electrolysis, I should say, and looking at the supply chain and improving, let's say, the cost for hydrogen. It's very important to get the cost for hydrogen down. The other one is an example of, let's say, the system integration. This is the field lab in Rotterdam on electrification, where we actually try to connect all the elements which are necessary. And then the other one is the hydro hub, where that's in Groningen, where there will be electrolyzers demonstrated on a large scale. And all these initiatives are actually connected through the tenure track calls, etc., to actually supply them with the knowledge base also.
Yeah, so the initiative and also the researchers, of course, are connected with each other. They're working together on projects. So let's go back then to Mentimeter to see what the results are. The question was, what should we prioritize for the energy transition? 125 answers already getting in. A few biomass, a few CCS, a few others, but we see two large piles, circular economy, but the very, almost half of the audience watching us chooses for electrochemistry. That doesn't surprise you, I guess.
That doesn't surprise me, no. I think these are key technologies. And maybe in the transition, the transition towards this fully renewable energy-driven society, we need maybe some other solutions also. Yeah. So this does not surprise me that people actually prioritize it in this way. And circular economy is, of course, also an integral part of this future.
Yeah, but the circular economy, Marjan Minnesma is here with us today. She will talk about that in her presentation. But let's go back to biomass, because you heard a lot of negative thoughts about on biomass these days. Also the same a bit for CCS, CCU, CCS. When you look at the circular economy, maybe we should do something with the things that go out of our chimneys and not only put them in the ground, but also take them for usage. Would we have different results if there was CCU instead of CCS, do you think?
I think with CCU, people certainly make the connection of, let's say, that's the combination, of course, of circular economy and electrochemistry or conversion of these molecules which you capture out of the air. A personal opinion, I think, maybe in this transition towards, let's say, a fully renewable energy society, I think some of these technologies need to be developed to be able to do CCU.
Yeah, and to be able to achieve the climate goals on a short term, we should get some things before they get into the air. Right. Okay, we go to the next part of the program for all the people that are watching us at home. Keep your Mentimeter at hand, because you can ask questions to all the speakers we have. We go to the first speaker in a few moments, and even during the presentation you can send your questions via Mentimeter, and after each presentation I will be here back on stage together with our speakers, and we will use your questions for our conversation. So this was the opening, and then we have two parts in the program. Later on this afternoon we're going to talk about the national initiatives. There are also the pitches where you talked about, but also a few more presentations. But first we start with the global perspective. En wij schrijven het. And to talk about the global perspective, here with us on stage is Marjan Minnesma. Welcome here with us today. I'll introduce you because there are a few people who don't know you yet, but I guess the vast majority of people who are watching know you. If I say the word Urgenda, then the Dutch-based people know where I'm talking about. Marjan Minnesma is the director and founder of Urgenda, a foundation in the Netherlands, and Urgenda helps frontrunners to achieve upscaling and makes the Dutch government more sustainable. And you do that by running a lot of projects, and also, you achieved that the Dutch government had to do something about climate change in a, at least in a faster way than they would have done otherwise. Welcome again here with us today. We have one question for you, and then it's time to boot your presentation. And that's because there's news today. All the Dutch news is about it. A report from Jan Rotmans from the Rotterdam University. It's about hydrogen. Basically saying is that if you go to a hydrogen-based economy, we in the Netherlands can only create 1/3 of the amount of hydrogen we need, and we will always have to import the other 2/3. What's your opinion on that?
Well, it depends what he said, because we think that we need hydrogen mainly for industry and not for houses and not for cars. And in theory, we could also get it from the Netherlands. We have made a plan for the Netherlands already since 2012, in which we show that we can get all the hydrogen if we have large enough electrolyzers and a lot of wind at sea. And the largest wind at sea turbine is now being built is at this moment 14 megawatt. If you would change all the current ones to 14 megawatt, and you see the potential, that could be all from the Netherlands. But I do think that there might be hydrogen from much less expensive sources. And I think, I don't know what he wrote because I didn't see his report, but I think that there will be cheaper sources, and most likely then industry will choose the cheaper sources, as always. So
yeah, and that's, that will be the future, that we import the green hydrogen from countries like Spain, maybe, where there's a lot of sun for solar energy, or Morocco or Saudi Arabia. Yeah,
there's a high probability that, let's say, hydrogen from these regions will be cheaper. Yes.
Yeah.
So then of course economics kicks in, and indeed they will get it from there.
Yeah, but we can have a hydrogen-based economy, but we have to be smart in where to get it.
Yes.
And not only on our own North Sea,
It's
where
also
it's
the question,
expensive.
do you want to be dependent on other countries?
Yes.
If you get it from Saudi Arabia or that region, that's usually not the most stable region in the world. So do you want to be dependent on that, or do you accept a little higher price, but have it from your own or in
Or in Europe,
the neighborhood in Western Europe? Those are all questions that we need to answer, but we need to scale up first.
All right. So let's start your presentation. The floor is yours. You have 15 minutes, and after that, I will be back here with questions for Marjan Minnesma. Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. For those people who have no clue who Agenda is, we are an NGO that tries to accelerate in the Netherlands, and 95% of our work is focused on doing things, changing things, helping frontrunners. But we have also won a climate case in the Netherlands that makes that the Dutch government needs to do something, from the Supreme Court even. So we'll tell a little bit about both, and as I only have 15 minutes, I will go quite fast. Agenda started already in 2007, and in the beginning we tried to accelerate things by doing things that everybody said, this is not possible yet. So we imported 50,000 solar panels from China with inverters and brought the price down with 1/3. And then everybody thought, oh, collective buying, we can do that too, and others started to do that too. We now make houses energy neutral for 35,000 euros in the Netherlands. That is the amount that people in the Netherlands spent on energy in 15 years' time. So if you can bring it forward and change it into a house without an energy bill, then even if you have borrowed the full amount, you can pay it back in 15 years' time for the same amount that you now spent on energy. So you can have a house without gas, on 100% renewable, with no higher cost than you have at the moment. So we look for solutions that can help people to make the change without making life more expensive. I would guess that most people in this audience know that we have a serious problem with climate change. We had a lot of CO2 in the air, but it was for 800,000 years between 180 and 280 parts per million. But since the Industrial Revolution, we went up to now 417 parts per million. And still all the people in the world governing the countries say we can still go to 450, because that's what they say if they say we go on with emitting until 2050. But if we emit until 2050, we will surely go beyond 2 degrees, and you don't want to know what that is. So we want to go to a world that stays below 1.5 degrees. And that makes that we have to move much, much faster than going slowly down in 30 years' time. Well, you see here the amount of CO2 in the air, and a lot of people think that because of this COVID-19 or whatever you call it, we have gone down a lot. Well, we haven't. We are not accelerating as much as normal, but we haven't gone down at all. And the temperature is still going up as we face at the moment. It's 30 degrees in the Netherlands. It's quite hot. But we are already 1 degree more than we were in 850, and we're still heading for 3 degrees at the end of this century, and you don't want to go there. And we are so lucky that more than 90% of all the heat is taken up by the oceans, and also half of the CO2 is taken up by the oceans. And therefore the oceans are already 30% more acid than they were in 1850, and they are much warmer, and the combination is not very good for all the life in the sea. And I think we should try to decrease that, because you don't know how long the oceans will still be able to do this, take this function. And a lot of the scientists for a very long time thought that the ice at Antarctica and Greenland would melt very slowly, because they thought it's so much watt per square meter and it takes ages. But they forgot that the warmer water was also melting the ice, so it's going much, much quicker than expected. And as you know, we are a low-lying country in the Netherlands, and the sea level rise is accelerating. Where it was 2.5 millimeter a year in the 90s, it's now in the latest report 5 millimeter a year. And we had a committee 10 years ago that said, that was asked by our government, what should we invest the next 100 years in making the dikes higher. And that committee said, well, the worst case scenario is 1.20 meter higher sea levels in 2100. Well, 1.20 meter, at that time people thought it was crazy, it was so activistic and so on. And the scientific committee that gave this number was really, well, not treated very nice, particularly by people in science. And we're now 10 years later, and our main institute in this field now says the worst case scenario is 2.5 to 3 meters. So within 10 years, we moved from 1.20 meter to 2.5 to 3. And of course, we don't hope that the worst case scenario will be the scenario that will be the one that comes out, but it does show that within 10 years, we moved very much. And we do not seem to be worried. And that makes me worried, because I think we should move much quicker. Well, and in the meantime, we are talking about all kinds of nitty-gritty. The wall is really close to us, and I think we should go for zero emissions in 2030. And what do? Well, we talk about all kinds of things, but not about the real thing that is hitting us. And that was the reason that we thought our government should do much more. And that's our government had said for, well, now 10 years, that industrial countries should reduce CO2 in 2020 by 25 to 40%. And they were not the only ones that say that. That was all the countries in the world that said industrial countries should reduce between 25 and 40%. And it was very clear that we were not heading for that. That was the reason why we went to court and said, this is such a big problem. We have a government that has a duty of care. There is an enormous dangerous situation coming up this century. Please make them act. And the government said, well, we agree that it's a dangerous situation, but we don't want to act. And in the end, 3 different courts up to the Supreme Court said, agenda is right. Maybe 40% is necessary, but that's up to politics. But the lowest level, 25%, that is really what you should do at least. And that makes that our government now at the moment has a serious problem because they were not on track. And this graph showed when we won for the first time in 2015, if you take a line to the own goals of our government, which is 49% in 2030, then our 2020 goal is on that line. So we don't ask anything strange. We actually ask them, do what you want to do yourself. We're actually helping them to reach their own goals. And still they were very angry that we demanded this 25%. But that doesn't help because now the Supreme Court has agreed with us. And we are not in there for a fight, so we made a plan together with 800 organizations how they could still reach this goal of 25% this year. And in the end, the Dutch government saw all these plans of us and we said, well, you can reach so many megaton less this year and so much next year. But you can also close coal-fired power plants, that's much cheaper. And in the end, they chose, and they said, okay, we're going to close down 1 coal-fired plant, maybe 2, and the others are not allowed to go for more than 25% of their capacity. And 30 of those 54 measures of agenda we are going to carry out. So we are quite happy actually with the results. But these are all things you can reach still this year and next year. So this is very short term. That means it's a lot of solar energy and it's a lot of energy saving. And wind and all the other solutions like industrial transformations need much more time. So that's not what you can reach within 1 year. Now, and we think that you should see the climate change problem as a much bigger problem than the current corona problem of COVID, whatever. And that we should treat it as a crisis. And that means that you need a president or someone leading your country every week on stage that says, we have a crisis, and within 10 years we go back to 0 emissions, and this is what we're going to do. And that means that you don't have a typical Dutch process of 3 years of sitting around tables and then coming up with a plan, and then we are taking much too much time, and our polder model, which is very well known in the world, is not suitable for a crisis. And for Agenda, what we did is we made, since 2012, 3 different plans how the Netherlands could become on 100% renewable energy in 2030. And of course, the first version was in 2012, so it's clear that that's easy to reach. And And the last version was from last year. And I really thought, can I keep it on 2030? Because I know that that's not, was not something you can reach in a normal situation within 10 years. But if you treat it as a crisis, it is possible. And we've shown in this book what you need to do with housing, with mobility, with industry, and so on. I don't have the time to go through that, but I'll take a few things out. In industry in the Netherlands, that's 40% of all our emissions. And it's a lot is the chemical industry. That's about half of all the emissions. And then the steel industry is mainly Tata Steel, and then you have a lot of others. And I visited all different industries on the level of CEOs, innovation officers, and so on, and asked them the question, suppose that you need to go back to zero emissions in 10 years' time. Is it possible? It can be that the CO2 price will be 200 euros, it can be a big disaster, but suppose there is a reason. Is it possible? And mainly, and actually all of them said yes. If it's really necessary, we can move much, much quicker. But we don't do it right now, because if we do it now, our product becomes more expensive and then we fall over. And what I very often do in speeches where there's not so many people like now that have a feeling for chemistry is explaining this, because I think it's one of your tasks is to explain people much better why we need to make this change and why chemistry is an extremely important part of the solution. So what I usually do is I say, we have, in the Netherlands, we make fertilizers, and that's one of the very big emitters of CO2. And what we do is we take natural gas, we get the 2 H's of the C and the 4 H's, and we put it to an N, and then this N with 3 H's is the main component of fertilizer. But if you only want an N with 3 H's, you can also take water and get the 2 H's from water and do them to the N, and you have exactly the same product. But in the first case, with natural gas, you also had this C, and that unfortunately likes the O, which is CO2, and then you get a lot of emissions, whereas in the lower one, you don't have the CO2 emissions. But why do we do this and not that? Because CO2 doesn't have a price, and because making hydrogen with an electrolyzer is much more expensive. And if you make it more expensive, then if you would do the green road, then the people buying fertilizers will go to the cheaper one. So you need a government that says either I make it more expensive in the dirty road or I help the green road. One of the two. The same goes actually for making steel. We now use coal. It's not a problem in itself if we would not make the CO and the CO2 into particles that go into the air. If you would get the CO, the coal monoxide, and you would bring it to the chemistry, which uses coal monoxide as one of the building blocks of much of their work, and they would also get hydrogen with an electrolyzer, then you could have the two together and have a lot less emissions. If you would combine steel with building material and you would use the CO2 for either the binding material or you would materialize it into a new building material, then you would have the 3 very big emitters in the Netherlands who could together be without emissions. And I would say that our government would not need to spend 3 billion on our airport, but you should spend 3 billion on making this happen, because then we would be the most modern industry in the world, and then we would have would be an example for the rest of the world. It could show this is what we could do. Let's move on within 10 years. And if you would do all the changes, you also need only 50% of the energy, because if you drive an electric car, you use all the energy for driving, whereas if you drive a combustion car, 40% is heat that you don't use. The same for coal-fired power plants. They will spend 40% on heat that you don't use, whereas if you use solar and wind energy, you use it all for your electricity. So in the change is a 50% reduction, and we very often forget that. Well, for the last thing, I also think that we need to do much more, because you can't demand from the next generations to try to get all the CO2 out of the air, because if you want to go a half degree lower, you would need all the agricultural land in the world planted with trees, and then you get enough CO2 out of the air for half a degree lower. That's impossible for them. So we need to speed up and don't wait until 2050, but go for 2030. And I hope that you will be the idiots that will do this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Marjan Minnesma, let's continue talking about this because we have a few minutes to answer questions. I see on the screen that there are already 15 questions asked by our audience. So let's pick a few out. Thanks for the talk, Marjan. What is your view on? Oh well, now the question is gone. Well, someone wanted to thank you for your talk. I would like to do that as well. Why is there no CO2 tax from the government? Is one question.
The Dutch government very often says we need to do this in Europe, and then all countries should agree.
Yeah.
And there are many countries that emit a lot of CO2, so they don't want it, and therefore it takes ages. And if we all wait for the other, then we will surely not be in time. So we should just start.
We should just do it on our own, and then hopefully other countries, like Germany, for example, will follow.
Suppose we would have a CO2 tax. You would need to put it in a fund and then give it, for example, to Tata Steel to make steel without emissions, or give it to the chemical industry to make chemical products without emissions. So I think we should use the money for the right things.
And in that way, we can, Tata Steel remains based in the Netherlands because it's still then profitable, but we need to subsidize them to make the steel production greener.
There are many different ways. I sat with Tata Steel and asked them, suppose that you would make steel without emissions, how much more expensive would your steel be? Then the car would be 10% more expensive. Well, I think let's put a tax then on the cars that have unsustainable steel, or help them with that to bridge that gap.
And that brings me to my next question. The question I already mentioned from someone also watching us. It's about the role of the consumers. That was the question. Thanks, Marjan. What's your view on the role of consumers? Are they prepared to pay 10% more when they buy a new car than they do now?
On average, there's a very small group that is prepared to pay more, but say 80% of people just want it to be arranged. So if all cars have an equal price, because the government makes the unsustainable cars a bit more expensive, then they simply buy the car that's most sustainable. If it's 10% more expensive, they won't do it.
And that's only when they are equally priced. Basically, what you're saying is that Dutch people, and I guess that goes for a lot of countries around the world, they want to have comfortable lives. They want to eat meat if they can. They want to drive a cheap car. They want to heat up their houses and not think about the emissions that comes with it.
I think that industry and governments should make sure that we make the sustainable system, and that it's easy for people to buy it. If you let the customers do the work, then 90% of the people will tell you, I want something sustainable, but if they're in the grocery shop and the sustainable chicken is much more expensive, they will buy the cheap chicken.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Next question. If other countries want to commit to renewable and sustainability, what would be the effects on countries like the Netherlands that are committed to do so? I guess the question has to be, if other countries don't want to commit to renewable and sustainability, what would then be the effects on countries like the Netherlands?
Well, we have made a plan for the Netherlands. If we would have in every municipality 9 wind turbines of 3-4 megawatt, and every person would have 9 solar panels on the roof, plus deep geothermal energy and 4,500 wind turbines at sea, that will be enough for everything. And I'm not saying that everybody has room for 9 solar panels, but my neighbor is a farmer and he has 200 on his roof. And then if you live in an apartment, you can have none. Yeah. And if in Rotterdam we put on this area, industrial area, 200 wind turbines, then you can say that in the green heart of the Netherlands, you don't need to do it. So we must do it a bit clever, but there is more than enough space to do everything that we need in the Netherlands. Yeah. And it's a choice then for example, that hydrogen, if you say, well, we want cheaper hydrogen, that you buy it from Spain, but we can make it here if we want to. It's not a matter of not enough space.
We have enough space, we have enough resources to do so, but still people are saying, well, we are destroying our economy by forcing this energy transition.
Yeah, we also made all the economic calculations. It will cost us investments of between 1% and 2% per year total depreciation for the coming 10-15 years. I think 1% to 2% of national product should be something that we can afford. Yeah. So I don't think it destroys our economy. It's the other way around. It creates 100,000 new jobs. because all those solar panels, all those houses that
They have to be installed, they have to be maintained.
and it's all handwork.
Okay.
So I think that's not true.
2 or 3 more questions from the audience. Someone is quoting, I've a huge concern on waste of battery material. Can it be such a problem like the plastic bags that we see everywhere?
Well, the current generation is, of course, not the best one that I envisage in a longer period. But I think we should simply start and give the batteries from now a 3rd, 4th, 5th life. So we should not throw it away and put it on a big garbage hub. But there's so little cars at the moment that are not in use that we don't even have the garbage yet. But I already see a lot of projects that think about this 2nd, 3rd life.
Because in a few years...
And I see new type of batteries coming, so...
Yeah, they are developed at this moment in labs around the world. And in a few years, when the first generation electric cars will be worn out, let's use that word, then we can reuse those batteries to store energy, for example.
Yeah, in a stationary situation, they can still be very good, whereas in a car, they're not so good anymore. And you already have these so-called municipality hubs where they have a lot of batteries, and they use that for temporary putting the solar energy there.
Next question. Is nuclear power not a solution for less CO2 emission?
Well, I would say nuclear power in France or other countries where it is safe, keep it, and first get out coal and the other things. But for the Netherlands, before we have a new nuclear power station, we are at least 10 years further. We don't have 10 years anymore. Dus for the Netherlands, I would say
it's too late.
It's too late.
Too late to invest in nuclear energy. Countries like Germany, they are also, of course, in the energy transition. The Wende, as they call it there. They've shut down a few nuclear power plants.
I think with the knowledge of now, they will probably say we should have shut down the coal-fired power plants first, and the nuclear ones last. But when it happened, just after the big disaster in Fukushima, then the time was there that they could make the swap. And from CO2 perspective, that's not the right order.
It was not the right decision.
No. So any nuclear reactor that's still okay and safe, I would keep it for now and first get out coal and gas, and then last nuclear if needed.
Yeah. Later on in this program, Jochen Wermuth will join us. He's a climate impact investor from Germany. And let's ask him the same question. Last question then for you, Marjan. It's about the maximum speed we have on the roads in the Netherlands. We lowered the maximum speed from 130 kilometers an hour to 100. What's the effect on CO2 emissions?
0.5 megaton a year.
That's not much.
And we had still to do this year 16.5. So it's a half of the 16.5. Yeah. So it's very small. We have put one coal-fired power plant out that was 1 megaton. So there's still a lot to do. But it also has an effect on nitrogen emissions. And we have another court case on that. So it does something on both sides.
On both sides. So you still agree with that?
I think it's a good idea.
Okay. Thank you for now. We will see you later when we have a little debate. For now, thank you. Marjan Minnesma from Agenda. Let's continue. Oh, Marjan, you can stay with. Oh, well, you already left the stage. No problem. We go to our next speaker, and that's someone who's on video with us. He is a professor at the Beijing University of Technology. Ladies and gentlemen, Kejun Yang is here with us. Kejun, can you hear me? Let's see.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, so welcome here. I look forward to your presentation. So take it away.
Okay, thank you. I'm so happy to be here. So because right now we are working on the hydrogen economy for China. So I'm keen to learn from you guys. I'm also surprised that in Netherlands, so many people come from chemical industry to do such kind of thing. Okay, so later I will learn more from you guys, but now I have finished my homework. So I'm Kejun Jiang from Beijing University of Technology and also Energy Research Institute. So my talk is about energy transition and CO2 mitigation pathways in China. Right now in China, we have for the energy and environment strategy already set by the government. For example, the central government have a very high-level planning, for example, eco-civilization's vision, and they want to have a beautiful China to improve the environment. The second one is the target is a significant improvement on eco-environment by 2035. It's a very specified time. And also we have another strategy called energy revolution, including energy supply, energy consumption, and also energy technology, and also energy management revolution. In the meantime, China start from 2013, we have very big program on air quality control. So so far the target is by 2030, air quality in China, all the cities will reach the national standard by 2030. And also we have the very far behind the schedule to do the national level. If you look at this one, from 2013, in my home, I'm now in Beijing, which is very bad air pollution. But by now, we already have very good progress and almost go to half of that. But the red bar there is above the red bar is the national standard. But the lower one is WHO standard, like you guys enjoy today. We hopefully by 2050, we can go to such kind of air quality. This is our roadmap. We are doing like this way. But the key message here is if we want to go to WHO standard by 2050, that means the emission from energy activities, including the air pollutant, should be nearly zero, because the background the emission for PM2.5 and other gases is already to 7 to 8 microgram per cubic meter. And also, in the meantime, right now, China have the target for sustainable goals. The Chinese government announced that we will reach these goals before the UN target year, that's 2030. So Chinese government is working very hard to set up our internal planning to do all the 17 SDGs. This is also have a strong impact on our energy system we are working on. About climate change policy, it's a very big story. So China already have our commitment in Paris Agreement. That means the NDC for China. The NDC is like this way. China will peak CO2 emission around 2030 and make effort to peak earlier. And another indicator is a 60 to 65% carbon intensity reduction by 2030 compared with that in year 2005. And we also have another target is 20% of non-fossil fuel energy in the total primary energy by 2030. But about the 60 to 65% target, I think we already go beyond than that, because the Copenhagen commitment in China, for China is 40 to 45% of carbon intensity reduction in 2020, this year, compared with that in year 2005. But actually, right now, we can do 50%. So this intense target, China is already did a very good job. The second point is China already signed Paris Agreement. That means the Paris Agreement target will be the Chinese target. This can be, say, 2 degree or 1.5 degree. So we are still working on that, what we can do with that one. China also launched the ETS from 2012 to 2017. This is a pilot phase in 7 provinces and cities. And from 2017, we launched the national ETS. Right now, we're still in the national pilot phase. We are working on the power generation sector. And the last one, the climate change related policies, we have low carbon city program. Right now, we have around 100 cities and the provinces. They are the low carbon cities. And but some good stories, we are still working on how to make Chinese effort to go to 2 degree and 1.5 degree. So whether it's possible to propose Chinese middle century strategy like that one. For example, by 2050, is this feasible to do carbon neutral, just like EU just proposed? That's also the reason why I want to learn from you guys for hydrogen economy in the near future. China is working, and also we are working on the scenarios. This is the pathway for the 2 degree energy transition. You can see coal is already reached the peak and start to decrease in China. And we also have the power generation sector transition. We have to use a lot of CCS in order to capture the CO2 emission from fossil fuel power generation. And we also just finished a study for 1.5 degrees scenario for China, which means by 2050, power generation sector, that's emission from electricity, should go to negative. We have to use a lot of BECCS to capture all the CO2 emission from power generation sector. And some good stories seems we are on the way to go to the 2 degree pathways. For example, this picture shows you the solar PV in 2013. At that time, we're really jealous for the EU colleagues because in EU, you really leading in the world for solar PV. This is 2013, but I'm also very happy for China. What we are doing is by 2019, China is really in the top for the solar PV. Almost we take the share of the half share of the global newly installed capacity for solar PV in the last 4 years. I think this year we will do the similar thing. So renewable energy is doing a very good job in China. Another several good stories, car efficiency is moving very fast. But actually this is the car from Japan, from Nissan. This very high fuel efficiency. They are electric car, but they use gasoline. They use gasoline for power generation, and to drive the car. So China also is introduced such kind of technology inside China and see what happened for that one. And this slide I want to show you the recent progress is the battery for bus. It's a quite surprise even to me. I keep very close eye on that. Every charge for the battery, they can run more than 800 kilometers. This picture tell you that the last year they already tried this technology from Beijing to Zhangjiakou, the nearby city, and come back, which travel 850 kilometers. But very important data is the electricity use per 100 kilometer for this bus is only around 70 kilometer hours, which means maybe the hydrogen-based fuel cell bus is infeasible in China because this technology very high efficiency compared with the fuel cell buses. So we are right now is working on that, whether China can go ahead with that kind of situation. This figure this table show you that the future hydrogen demand, we just prepare our paper is sent to the journal, and hopefully it can be published. But our major application of hydrogen is in industry. So that's the reason so good news to hear from you guys that what can happen. Before the presenters mentioned about the question asked whether it's a harm, damage for your economy, but answer is not. I believe when we look at this conference, I believe the hydrogen technology in Netherlands will be leading in the world. This is where will be benefit for your economy. I hope the Chinese company can really follow up. So maybe in the future, EU, China, and the Netherlands and China can work together much more closely because anyway, China is a very big market in the future hydrogen economy in the world. Okay, thank you very much. I'll finish here.
Thank you very much, Kejun. And well, what I forgot to mention, good evening for you there in Beijing.
Studio 8 o'clock.
It's already midnight where you are. Well, we will take a few questions from the audience. Will China set up its own emission reduction targets?
Yes, this is a very often asked question, whether we want China to take a cap on the CO2 emission. My answer is that China still make a proposal on that and make some research program to do the study. Let's see what happens by end of this year or beginning of next year. China anyway should propose our middle-century strategy to UNFCCC.
But it will be part of a larger program that you're already developing at this moment?
Yes, we are strongly proposing China should have some cap emission reduction target. So this is what we want to do.
Okay, perfect. And you also mentioned that hydrogen is supported by your government. Where does the hydrogen come from? Is it green hydrogen or gray?
It's basically green hydrogen. But they are nowadays in China, they are trying the technology. So in our scenario, I just show you that the hydrogen 100% come from renewable energy and nuclear, from water electric process, not from the green hydrogen. So our future should be green hydrogen.
Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds great. Of course, the same goes here for the Netherlands in the future. Of course, hydrogen will be green as a great alternative. Then, last question: what's the future? What is the future of ETS in China?
I'm not sure. We do hope the Chinese ETS can go really similar like EU ETS phase 3. But one big change right now is a lot of zero carbon emission technology is getting cheaper than fossil fuel fire technology. So I'm not sure whether we still need ETS, but I strongly support ETS. Go ahead with that one, but let's see.
All right, Kejun Jinyang, thank you very much for now. Please stay on the line because we will need you in about half an hour for our debate with the other speakers. But thank you for now. Then, ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching at home, we go from Beijing, we go to Germany because there is Jochen Wermuth. He is a climate impact investor based in Germany. Jochen is also here on video with us in the studio. Jochen, can you hear me?
Yes, hello.
Welcome here. We ask you the same question as we did to our previous speakers. Prepare a presentation, and after that we'll have some time for Q&A. So if you are joining us right now, please join us on Mentimeter. Go to menti.com and fill out 660497, and you can send in your questions for Jochen. Jochen, the floor is yours. Good luck.
Yep, just a second. My controls here all set. Now apologies. There we go. Okay, well, thank you very much for, you're also live now. Thank you very much for being with me today. I am based in Berlin. We, as you may have, many have seen, as a leader in the energy transition, and the German government just announced a nearly 10 billion package to support ventures in the clean tech space and ventures in general, as well as a nearly 10 billion package to promote the hydrogen economy. I wear 3 hats. One is that I serve on the investment committee of our own family office. We invest across all asset classes with a positive impact on the environment as a mission for our family. We invest in venture companies via the green growth funds, and I sit on the investment committee of Germany's new sovereign wealth fund called the Energy Transition Fund, KENFO. This is in fact money we received from the nuclear operators, which we have the duty to invest long term, so the money is enough to pay for the storage of nuclear waste for the next 20,000 years. I just want to, as an investor, give you a background of how we sort of see the situation. If you're an investor, then you're in paradise now, in the sense that it took 1 billion people to come into the middle class today, about 100 years, and we'd expect another 1 billion people to reach the middle class in the next 10 years. So there's really tremendous growth, never mind what it is, any widgets you're selling, there's likely to be great opportunities. But given that we had a guest speaker from Beijing, I have a picture from Beijing. This is what the downside looks like. If we do not control the emissions, if we do not care about the environment, it will be very unhealthy. You may also have heard about some of the wonderful shocks to the system on the Arctic. I don't know if you heard this wonderful joke I saw the other day. Climate change is really a joke. Even the icebergs are cracking up. So here we go. This is the iceberg that broke up recently. It's about, in diameter, much bigger than New York, Manhattan. If this iceberg splashes into the sea, you will know that, in fact, if it melts, the sea levels will actually go down because ice, of course, needs more space than water. However, when the ice cap that's sitting on Antarctica then follows, and if the ice cap on Greenland follows, we have 67 meter higher sea levels, And you can see where the Netherlands should really be a big champion of this energy transition. Even my hometown, Berlin, will be underwater. So I think it's very urgent and important that we use our know-how and the one that you're bringing together, the chemistry, the power to X, to really stop this as quickly as possible. This is a far greater threat to humanity than the COVID virus, and I hope we can do it. The solution, of course, is very nearby. This is just solar power. This is the Desert Tech project. The company Gazprom is promoting the idea that there's not enough space in Germany for enough renewable powers. But of course, even a fraction of German surface would suffice to power the world, just as this fraction here on the Sahara suffices to power the world. The key thing that's changed since Desert Tech, since Germany started the feed-in tariff back in the turn of the century, 20 years ago, is that whatever you did in renewables, you were dependent on government subsidies. It was basically suicide from an investor's point of view to invest in unproven technologies which are government dependent. But this has completely changed. We've broken through grid parity. And if there's one number to take home from today, it's that at 2 cents per kilowatt hour, oil can only compete at $4 a barrel. So for the one day that oil went to negative prices, that was competitive. But nobody can lift oil below $30 a ton in Russia, $60 in the North Sea, or $150 in tar sands. So hands down today, solar power, wind power, geothermal power beat the fossil fuels. It's the end of an era. We're definitely changing. And basically, this is what you call an industrial revolution. Of course, you may say that oil is only used hardly for power. It's mainly used for transport. So let's look at the electric car. They used to be as expensive as the first mobile phone, which cost $1 million. Now you can buy a Nissan Leaf car, which costs you just 20,000 euros. It saves you 1,000 euros a year compared to a combustion engine car. And if you use the electric car battery, as is now done in the Ajax Amsterdam, or rather Ajax Amsterdam Stadium, then you can earn another 1,000 euros a year with your electric car, and your car pays for itself in 10 years. Plus, by using the electric car battery as a storage power plant, you reduce twice as much CO2 as you would just from switching from combustion to electric car. So both the power supply and the transport are about to switch. So we're in the middle of what I call a new industrial revolution. As you will know, the first industrial revolution was led by Great Britain, which became a great industrial power. The British completely missed the second industrial revolution, which took place between 1900 and 1914. In 1900, on Wall Street, on Easter Parade, you had only horse-drawn carriages. It's not surprising that no whip maker became a piston maker, but what is surprising is that none of the carriage makers became a car maker except for Renault. As a result, every single member of the first Dow Jones Index was wiped out by 1914, except for Western Union. And the same is about to happen to the big industry in Europe and the world. If companies do not drastically reform themselves, they'll be wiped out in this new third industrial revolution. And just as the US and Russia took over from Great Britain as the world powers, at the moment, everything looks like China is in fact leading the great third and green industrial revolution. We have some good news from Holland, and that they've got a great company called Hard Hyperloop. To give you an idea what the new horse-drawn carriage will look like, the Hard Hyperloop, for example, will sort of fly under Earth, levitating or magnet-based at 1,000 kilometers per hour at 1/10 the energy consumption at the price of a train ticket. So this, of course, completely replaces all of the continental aviation history. Another key thing that was already mentioned by Ogenda beforehand will be deep geothermal. There are now technologies which will allow us to drill deep enough to reach geothermal not just on 3% of the world's crust, but 70%, and turning regular coal power plants into simple geothermal plants, not just in Iceland and Japan, but on 70% of the Earth's surface. This is what it looks like. If you can drill just 3 kilometers, there's almost no geothermal in Europe. If you drill 10 kilometers with this new technology, you really have the whole world covered and we can go within 6 years to 100% renewable power. We need 600,000 such wells. The oil and gas industry drills 100,000 a year. So in 6 years, this is doable. I'd say a 2030 transition to 100% renewables becomes possible. And with that, the need of power to X, power to chemicals is what's needed. Of course, we have to also tackle our feeding habits. The Republic of Cattle, if all the cows were one country, is the third largest emitter. A hamburger consumes about 26 times as much CO2 as does a veggie burger. And if you look at the distribution of the biomass on Earth, basically 97% of on Earth is either humans or animals we eat. It is really scary, and we've got to change our habits if we want to survive as a species. Let's come back to business, and let's come back to the Industrial Revolution. It's really the intersection of not just energy, but also transport. It's only by making use of the electric car batteries in the cars that the renewable energies have a proper storage. It's also the connection to fintech by having a little company here in Berlin called Mobisol, offering anybody with a mobile phone the ability to put a solar panel on their roof profitably today. The world is changing without any government subsidies. It is also the intersection with circular economy models where we no longer waste any resources. Today, 95% of the goods we buy end up on a trash pile 6 months later, and that's just not sustainable. We will use artificial intelligence to make our systems more effective, and of course we've got to move to sustainable agriculture. All of that is now available, profitable, without much government intervention. It's winning hands down. Why should we care about the Industrial Revolution? Well, our first president used to say that the European values are based on 3 mounts. Athens, of course, for democracy, Rome, the capital, for rule of law, and Golgotha for caring for thy neighbor. We had English and British, and then later American, Russian global dominance, and these values of ours were defended globally for a while. But in fact, it now looks like in America, some have given them up as well in England, so we don't really know. But it matters if we care about rule of law, democracy, and social values that we have a functioning economy. We thus must embrace the Green Industrial Revolution to be a global leader if we want to defend our values, or we simply live under the value of others. The breakthrough in the Green Industrial Revolution is currently happening in China, which is by far the leader on electric cars, for example. The total number of electric cars in Germany is less than China registers every month. 250 million Chinese go to work on 100% electric transport every day already. We're so far behind in Europe, it's not even funny. So I like to say that here in Germany, at least, we're following the Kodak business model, where Kodak basically invented the digital camera. It then discarded it and it went bankrupt. Germany invented the energy transition. It made available solar power at cheap prices to the world. It skipped the transport transition because we have so many combustion engine car makers, and we're about to have 1 million unemployed. The last time we had that was in 1933, and German history and European history after this wasn't pretty. So it's very urgent and important that the European Commission moves forward with a Green New Deal, and that we embrace the energy, transport, fintech, and other transactions seriously. Here we have some good news from science for the one thing that the policymakers should do, the one thing we must ask for as citizens and as scientists, as entrepreneurs, as investors. In Economics 101, we learn that the market economy will only function if the externalities are priced at full value. In the case of a ton of CO2, the German Environmental Agency estimates that the damages in terms of allergies, in terms of asthma, in terms of cancer, so health damages, the damages in terms of destroying the natural environment are 640 euros a ton, 640. Now, in the past, people have discounted this number, and they said, oh, we should aim for a CO2 price of 180. But that was only the case when there was positive interest rates. So you gave me 180 euros today, I put it in a savings account, over 100 years it would grow to 640 to pay for all the damages. But as Einstein said, the eighth miracle of the world is compounded interest. It allows this. When interest rates are zero as they are now, you could not accept a payment of 180 because they will not grow to 640 over 100 years. So we must install a price of 640 euros per ton of CO2 right away to make sure that the economies function properly. Now, some people will argue that that's not a good idea because we would have to, we would have to have big damage to the economy. Here you see the summary of the slide. 640 euros is the actual cost, 180 is the target of Scientists for Future and Fridays for Future. The actual price in the European Union is 35 euros. The actual price in reality is we actually subsidize fossil fuel consumption globally still. So to get rid of this situation, we should call for a CO2 price where we collect 640 euros per ton emitted, but we give it right back to the people. So the government doesn't keep the money, it goes back per capita. So if I, as a Dutchman or Dutch woman, consume 10 tons of CO2 per year, I will get, let's say, at the beginning of the year, 6,400 euros in cash. If I consume an average amount of CO2 over the course of the year, all the money, 6,400 euros, is spent and I'm break even. If I switch from traveling by plane to traveling to Hyperloop, if I switch from driving a combustion engine car to a bike, then I can all of a sudden keep money in my pocket. This is not just a proposal that I came up with a year ago or something. It's a proposal now backed by 27 Nobel Prize winners for America. We've got to put a clear signal to the market. The current stimulus programs of the governments for our economies is like throwing feed to chicken without heads. We have to have a clear price for the externality cost, and the money must be given back to the people pro rata. So those who are poorest, who don't drive 5 Mercedes, they will make money from this and they will be strengthened from it. And those who want to have 5 private jets can have 5 private jets, but they have to pay a bit more. This is the one policy measure we need. We will move to green energy in any case, but we may not be fast enough. Because one of the key things is that we need to be climate neutral in Germany by 2023 if we want to be climate just. If we take 1.5 degree target and we divide the remaining emissions per capita, Germany and Holland should be climate neutral not in 2050, but in 2023. And anything talking about 2050 is old news, no longer true. We've got to move much faster, and we can move much faster. This was the dividend slide. I got them upside down, apologies. With this, I think we can come to the conclusion. Basically, even the Saudi oil minister said as late as 20 years ago, the Stone Age did not come to an end because we ran out of stones. The Stone Age came to an end long before we ran out of stones. And similarly, this age of fossil fuels is coming to an end right now, long before we run out of any of all fossil fuels. This is a wonderful opportunity from an investor point of view. It's a wonderful time for innovators. I'm very, very impressed by the initiatives in Holland, led by Constantine von Oranje and others in the startup Delta. I'm very impressed by the ECCM initiative here to think about Power to X. We have the opportunity to create a wonderful world to live in. A world where the inventor of the German feed-in tariff said, I'm not a fan of solar, I'm not a fan of wind, I'm a Democrat. If every individual in the world had their own geothermal power, their own solar, their own wind, we would have a society which no longer depends on central power. We wouldn't have to pump oil from Russia or via ships from Saudi Arabia to Holland. We could have a local power. And as a result, we live in a world where 2 billion people now living in poverty will be lifted out of poverty, where people will be able to have solar power lights at night, they can read, they get educated, and we can easily live in a world where, as we know, we have enough for everybody's needs, just not enough for everybody's greed. So it's a wonderful time to be an investor, it's a wonderful time to be a scientist. I hope that COVID has woken us up to the importance of acting together. And I look forward to doing this, and I look forward to the next 10 years, which will be wonderful, a wonderful world, as Louis Armstrong would have said. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jochen Wermuth from Berlin in Germany. Jochen, thanks again for your presentation. A quick round of questions. A lot of questions already popping into Mentimeter. We picked two out of them. The first one is a bit interesting about, well, the quote you've shown in your presentation from the Saudi Minister of Oil. Which areas of the world will have the highest sustainable investment potential? You're an investor yourself. What do you think? Should it be Saudi Arabia because the sun is shining there and well, they can plimp out the desert with solar panels, or maybe Europe has the highest investment potential?
I would think that unfortunately it will make very little sense to live in the Middle East in the next few years because it gets so hot. So it's much more likely that we have most of solar, wind and geothermal installed in the more temperate climates. And unfortunately surviving in Northern Africa. EMEA looks very unlikely at this point in time. I'm very happy that the Saudi government wants to move this way, but unfortunately they are still confused in that they are saying they want to capture carbon from oil production. So I think they're not quite serious yet.
They're not serious enough yet. And then with the geothermal, you also have shown the Kodak moment. What about the big oil and gas players nowadays? When will they meet their Kodak moment, do you think?
Well, I wish all the best to Royal Dutch Shell and to BP to actually do the transition. At the moment, some of them are still spending more money on denying climate change than they are on researching new energy sources. So the most likely scenario, because there's so many people well paid to do nothing, and new incumbents will take over. That's the most likely scenario. That's what history teaches us, and that's what Mark Twain says. History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. Very unlikely that any of the oil majors, gas majors, any of Mercedes, Porsche, Audi, Volkswagen will survive. Tesla today has a market cap bigger than all of the German car makers taken together.
That's a great quote to wrap it up from here. Jochen Wermuth, thank you very much. We go to the last presentation of the first part of this program of the ECCM 2020 conference, and from Germany we go to the United States of America. So good morning, America, because Katie Ayers is here with us. Katie, what time is it at your place now?
It is 8:22 in the morning.
Okay, then a good morning. Time for your presentation. Good luck.
Thank you, and thank you to the organizers for inviting me. So now I think we'll transition a little bit to more specifics about hydrogen. It was mentioned before about the cost of electrolysis. So I want to give a little bit of perspective on where we are today and where we see things going. So this is a photo of one of our 1 ton per day systems installed for bus fueling in California. So just to give a brief perspective, because people ask me sometimes, are there actually products in electrolyzers? So Nel has decades of experience on the product side in both technologies, and I'll have a next slide on what the difference is between the two. But the older technology is this liquid alkaline technology. It's been around since, for almost 100 years, basically, starting with Norsk Hydro. That company has gone through several iterations. And then on the proton exchange membrane-based side, that was a technology originally developed in the 50s for aerospace applications and was taken to a more commercial product in the late 1990s, early 2000s. And so you can see here the gradual scale up of these systems getting to the point that we're at today. So Proton Energy Systems was acquired by Nel in 2017, and now we have both technologies at megawatt scale. So just to give a brief introduction about the different technologies, and I'm not going to go into great technical detail, but I wanted to point out a couple of different things in terms of how these systems work. So the liquid alkaline technologies, obviously you have this corrosive electrolyte that is circulating through the cell. The fact that you're operating at high pH means you can use metals such as stainless steel, nickel, and things like this, as opposed to platinum and other expensive materials. Because it's this more open cell design and it's this fairly thick cells, the current density is lower, so the stacks have to be bigger. So there's two types. There's basically the traditional cells where you have liquid and bubbles coming through there on the far left, and people are moving more towards this more compact design where you have porous materials next to the electrode to help manage that. Then on the proton exchange membrane-based side, you have a solid electrolyte where you see this red arrow that conducts protons. The reliability at megawatt scale is fairly equal to KOH at this point, but there's a lot more room for cost improvements and efficiency improvements because right now this technology, I would say, is slightly behind. But if you look at the compactness of the stack versus the alkaline systems, there's quite a difference in terms of the footprint. A megawatt stack is about half a cubic meter here and closer to 20 cubic meters for the KOH technology. So each technology has its own strengths and advantages and will most likely fit in different applications going forward. Again, some context around why we are where we are today with these technologies. The liquid alkaline systems from the beginning were applied to industry, and so they were built, they were scaled pretty early. They were put into big plants, and they were designed originally for efficiency and low operating cost. So this is a picture from the 1950s, one of the largest electrolyzer plants ever built. It's 135 megawatts. It was actually used in a green application. So, they were taking hydropower to generate hydrogen from electrolysis and then using that hydrogen to make green ammonia. In contrast, when the PEM systems were originally developed, they were not developed for hydrogen applications, but for oxygen applications. And so it was used for life support and closed environments. The most important thing was reliability in these systems because people were breathing in places where you couldn't get oxygen except by splitting water. And so that drove very different design requirements. People didn't care in the beginning about things like efficiency and how much it costs. It was all about how reliable it could be made. And so it wasn't until that time frame in the late 1990s, early 2000s when it started to be commercialized that these other factors became more important. And I think that's important in terms of understanding the legacy of these different designs. And even on the PEM side, we weren't getting up until recently into the kind of 100 kilowatt and beyond levels of capacities. And so these systems also tend to run at quite high current density to keep the capital costs down. So what that kind of means in terms of where PEM is today, and the rest of my talk is going to focus more on that technology, is that we're still relatively immature. I mean, we've only been doing this at scale for the last decade at most. Also, if you look at the differences between where fuel cells that are very similar technology are versus electrolyzers, there's a difference in how those have evolved. And so the supply chain is much more developed for the fuel cell. It's less developed from the electrolyzer. There are specific requirements that the electrolyzer has that the fuel cell does not. For example, typically these systems are running at about 400 psi hydrogen generation, and so there's extra stress on the materials. The voltages are higher. It's a fully flooded system, which tends to weaken membranes and things like that. But also, part of the reason there hasn't been more drive to get these materials developed or at least commercialized faster is that if you look at the companies that were involved in commercializing the fuel cells, they're all very large companies everybody's heard of: GM, Toyota, Honda, Hyundai. If you look on the flip side, on the electrolyzer side, these are all small companies, Nel, Giner, Hydrogenics, ITM, others, that you don't see on TV putting out ads for their commercial products. They're typically less than 1,000 people, and so it's just been more difficult to move quickly. Also, on the electrolyzer side, because we've been at smaller scale and we haven't penetrated the market quite as much, large material suppliers that are making components for fuel cells are not as interested in the volumes for the electrolysis side, because even a gigawatt of electrolysis is about 50,000 square meters of membrane. In addition, the programs that have been out there to date, while they have helped advance electrolysis considerably, are relatively small compared to what's the total needed. So if you look at least in the US, a lot of the funded programs through the government tend to be in the $1 to $2 million range per project. That gets you a long way in terms of understanding an individual component, but it doesn't necessarily give you enough funding to fit all the pieces together. So if you have one component that you've developed and it's got to match up with the next component in the device, you have to make sure that those work with each other, and that requires additional experimentation and coordination between the two. Also, if you think about a total investment needed of probably $100 to $200 million in terms of getting these systems to the point where they need to be, a huge company might not think that that's large of a number, but if you're only funding projects at $1 to $2 million at a time, that's very, very slow in terms of getting to where we need to go. So the manufacturability at scale requires a significant capital investment and also process development, which I think is also often overlooked. Materials development is important, but if you don't know how to make it, then it's not going to get to commercialization at scale. And so this is just some perspective on kind of why research goes so slow in some of these areas. Most people are doing at most in academic labs, test cells that are 25 square centimeters. So you've got a little test cell that's this big. Even in our labs, we might go to 100 square centimeters in order to prove that something is feasible and seems to work. But to get it into a product, you've got to scale that by 4 orders of magnitude in terms of how you're making it, making sure it's reproducible, making sure every section of that is the same, and it has to last for 7 to 10 years. So predicting that based on experiments at these smaller levels is difficult, and so it takes a lot of effort to translate those over. You're also probably not making the components the same way at these small scales as you are when you need to churn out, 4 orders of magnitude more active area for them. And so translating from what you're doing here in the lab to what you would do in an industrial process just takes time and effort. It's not impossible. It just takes investment. And so I think there's a huge amount of promise in where we can go, provided that the investment is there to do it. And so just the last couple of slides are some specific examples of things that we're trying to do, and some of the high needs. So one of the most expensive components in the electrolyzer is the catalyst-coated membrane. Right now, those processes are very batch-oriented and have a lot of labor, and also because they're very batch-oriented and manual, the process capability is not that high. So we have to use thicker membranes and thicker catalyst layers in order to be consistent from part to part. Moving to more of a roll-to-roll type of process is much more precise. We can use thinner membranes, we can use thinner catalyst layers, and obviously the labor cost is reduced. So when we did this for the bipolar plate, as an example of another component translating to a new manufacturing process, we were able to get an 80% cost reduction, and we think the same is possible here. We also need work on porous transport layers. You're managing gas and liquid flow in these systems, and these components, again, the integration side, need to match up with the catalyst-coated membrane. And so understanding how these fit together and optimizing both the porosity through the part as well as the interface with the next layer are also important. And then finally, on the systems side, there's work that needs to be done on the power electronics. A lot of the electrolyzer designs are high current and low voltage, which is not where some of the more, at least less expensive power supply architectures tend to be. As we transition from more industrial applications to more renewable applications, integration with DC current versus having multiple AC to DC conversions is important. And then as we grow the system, we need to have more of a process plant mindset rather than an appliance mindset. And so we see opportunities in all of the different areas to reduce the cost of PEM electrolysis significantly, but we need to get to process understanding and materials understanding in addition to just continuing to work on scaling up. So I'm going to stop there, and then if there are questions, I can answer them now, or we can move into the panel discussion.
Kate Ayers, thank you very much. We will do one question now, and then the rest of the questions we will use during the panel discussion. One question from the audience. What is electrolysis used for today when it's still more expensive than the method with steam?
So the cost really depends on what kind of volumes you're talking about. And so there are niche applications where generating hydrogen from electrolysis, because you can do it locally and you're not paying transportation costs or packaging costs, is actually cheaper than using some of the more industrial processes. It's kind of like when you order chemicals in 5-gram quantities, you pay a lot more per gram than you do when you're ordering them in kilograms. And so it's used for these smaller applications like manufacturing facilities where they're using hydrogen for a process, power plants where they're using it for cooling, and those types of applications.
And are there then any practical skill limitations for electrolyzers, like the system or not enough stack or anything?
That's something that we've looked at quite a bit. I think on the system side, as I mentioned, it's really more of a mindset to move more towards a process plant, which should be, fairly infinitely scalable. I mean, they make ammonia at enormous scale today, and this would be similar. I think the stack is going to be more of a modular device where you get to a certain point, it just becomes less practical to scale. But if you can put multiple stack modules in a very large balance of plant, you should be able to get a lot of economies of scale.
All right, Kate Ayers, thanks for now. Stay on the line, because it's time for our open discussion on the global perspective. And here in the studio, Richard and Marjan are joining us. And of course, our 3 previous speakers are still online with us. And we need you back at home, because we have a few Mentimeter questions prepared, and all it's going to take place in less than 10 minutes, because in 10 minutes we have a short break to catch some coffee, to catch a breath of fresh air. But first then, question in Mentimeter: what is the main bottleneck for the implementation of electrochemical conversion and materials? And there are a few possible answers. You can see them in Mentimeter. Go to menti.com and use the code 660497, 660497. A few possibilities. Is it technology? Is it policy and regulation? Education and training? Is it economy? Or is it public acceptance? What we see here on the people who voted, policy and regulation and technology are main bottlenecks, because that's more than half of the answers that are given. A few see also bottlenecks in the economy. Let's start with our panel here. Marjan, well, first question then for you. What do you see as the bottleneck? Because you have a fight with the Dutch government because of the legislation, because of everything is going too slow in your eyes. Is then policy and regulation the main bottleneck, or do you see also problems with technology?
Well, those things hang together. I think we should spend more money on scaling up those technologies much quicker. And at this moment, and then you come to the economy part, the solutions are not cheap enough to let the market do the work. So you need the government to come to a level that we will see that it is a very important possibility in the new circular economy. But this first part, you need help.
And that goes, for example, with the green hydrogen, nowadays, it's not possible without subsidizing it from a government perspective.
Yeah, and you need, of course, if we're going to make real green hydrogen, then you need more wind turbines at sea, which are then used for making hydrogen, which you need to get to land to the places where you need it.
Yeah.
That all costs money, and all the individual companies are not prepared at the moment to pay that. So you need to do it together with the help of the government. So it's also always a mixture of things that need to turn together, but it starts with telling the story why we need this.
Yeah.
That it is a part of the solution. And I think telling it in understandable words is also important, because most people in policy and in politics are not what we call betas.
Okay.
So they don't understand this. And I heard a lot of things that I think, yeah, I can understand you, but I'm quite sure that people in politics do not.
Let's go then to Katie in the USA. Most politicians are not betas. The same goes, I guess, for your president. Do you have any problems with translating your urge, your story to people in politics?
I mean, I think we've been fortunate, particularly in our state, that fuel cells and hydrogen are very well supported by the delegation, because there is so much industry in Connecticut. And actually, surprisingly, hydrogen has done better under this administration than the last one, which is kind of ironic. I think it's just a matter of, there's so much momentum right now behind hydrogen. There's the Hydrogen Council and a lot of other things going on, that it becomes undeniable that you need to make sure that we're keeping up to some level. And I've been pretty vocal about the fact that, you know, a lot of this technology was been to our government. The technology's been developed here, and we don't want to lose that, as was discussed in a couple of other talks to other places.
So you don't want to lose the momentum, and the momentum is now.
Correct.
All right. Then for the next question for the audience, also a Mentimeter, who should take the lead then into speed up the development of ECCM? Is it part of the government, the corporations, the knowledge institutes, or the citizens? And you can make a top 4, so you can prioritize them in Mentimeter. Already 10 of you have done so. We see a government now on first place, second corporates. Almost none of you rank citizens high. I also talked about with Marjan on that. Let's go, maybe interesting, to Kejun in Beijing. You depend a lot on your government, I guess, because you have a roadmap for the next 5 years, for the next 20 years, the next 25 years maybe. And when you follow the government, everything will be all right regarding hydrogen or regarding ECCM in general?
Yes, I'm thinking about China. The Chinese government is keen to support hydrogen development in China. So right now, I think more than 30 cities already have the program to give money, subsidy to build a station and hydrogen pipeline, and also the fuel cell buses, cars. But the problem here is whether this is a correct direction, because I still think about the industry use is very important in our future. So ECCM, for me, you can play a very important role from the industry side and from technology development side to show this is feasible. Because right now, I didn't see anything from China to support the hydrogen use in chemical industry or in other industry, because the technology is still totally new. That's my expectation from ECCM and from you guys to take a very good leader in the future.
What we all agree on is that it's time to really speed up the developments, that things have gone too slow maybe in the past years. Jochen, in Germany, as an investor and always looking for great opportunities, are you maybe jealous on countries like China who say, well, let's make this happen, let's run out the pipelines, also the biggest investor in solar in the world. In Europe, we are divided, aren't we?
First of all, I'm an economist by heart and blood and so forth, so I'm very, very happy if the Chinese do something well, and we can learn from them and we can put the technologies to work in China, there's demand. That's the lack of being an investor. If the German and the Dutch government decide to stay in the Stone Age, so the investor moves to China, no problem.
And then we lose the investors here.
That's right. But as a global citizen, I think we're all one, and I think we should look at who has delivered what and who can contribute. And so if there's wonderful developments in Connecticut, the German government committing 10 billion euros, well, that maybe is the scale you need for a while, right? So maybe some of the technology gets developed in Germany and the US, and maybe in China we have the large enough market to really scale it up. And I think one should not spend time worrying so much about, international property rights or depicting China as an aggressive nation. I think we shouldn't forget that it's the US that has 800 military bases abroad and not China, I think. So I think let's work together. It's very urgent and important to work together.
But let's not discuss military right now. We go to the last question for the audience. That's about the price of green hydrogen. Question for you guys at home. When will the price of 1 kilogram green hydrogen drop below €1? Is it in less than 10 years, in 2030, in 2040, in 2050, or maybe never? Marjan, the price at this moment is about €3 per kilo. So we see a decline of 2/3 of the price. The majority of the voters at this moment say in 2040. So that is in 20 years. Is that possible?
I think if we really want to, it's possible. I would also say, because I have a more urgent agenda, that it should be possible earlier. If we really if we treat it as a crisis, it could also be possible. It's also always a matter of scaling up, and if you put a lot of resources on it, then I think it can be quicker.
Okay, it's maybe a matter of fact, of course, the €1, the €1 comes, of course, from the price for, let's say, the steam reformation process. And, if you start actually taxing this on the CO2, then, of course, you would have an earlier point where you actually could introduce green hydrogen.
It's time to wrap it up, and that's because of it's time to go to a little break. Before we do that, I would like to thank.
What does the economist say?
The economist, very short, because we are going to wrap it up. Jochen, Berlin.
If we have the marginal cost of a geothermal power plant, wind and solar is zero, right? Once it's established, and once we have 100% renewables, there will be free power, and therefore hydrogen is going to be free, basically. So it can happen by 2030 easily.
Okay, then it can be done fast. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jochen, Kejun, and Katie on video, and of course Richard and Marjan here on stage. Thanks all for joining us. If you're watching this live, we will have a short break. We will be back in 10 minutes. So at 14:55 sharp for the second part of the program, which we are going to discuss the national initiatives. Now a short break, take a breath of fresh air, take a cup of coffee or a glass of water, and in 10 minutes we will be back here. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back on the Dutch Conference on Electrochemical Conversion and Materials, the ECCM 2020, here from the studio in Amsterdam. Welcome to you at home, at your office at home. Maybe you are at your office, or you are just outside in your garden, in your car, wherever you're watching us. Welcome. I hope you have a great afternoon. You liked the first part of the program where we talked about the global perspective. Now it's time to zoom in on the national initiatives. 3 initiatives from the Netherlands will be showed here, will be shared with you. And we have also 6 pitches to go, 6 interesting examples we would like you to enjoy and to take home with you. We're going to start with the first national initiative. It's presented by Paulien Herder, Professor of Energy Systems at the Delft University of Technology. Paulien, welcome in the show. Hope you can hear me. There you are. Good luck.
I just checked with the technicians behind the screens that I could not hear our moderator just now. So I hope I will hear him after my session, because I expect he's going to ask me a couple of questions. But just assuming that you can indeed hear me, let me start by saying good afternoon and welcome to my brief presentation on long-term research and innovation initiatives that have been taken by Dutch research innovation consortia. And it's really my privilege and also my honor to be one of those speakers saying and telling you a little bit about what we have accomplished as an ECCM community in the Netherlands, and also what kind of questions that we are aiming to tackle in the next 10 to 15 years, or maybe even 30 years, because I don't think I need to stress that we are in this for a long time together. This is not a matter of just a few years or just a few ideas. This is a long-term endeavor that we really need to pursue. So I agree with Marjan that this is really a crisis and we need to push and move on really fast, but not make this a one-off thing and then relax back again and do our stuff, whatever we have been doing in the past. So treat it as a crisis, but also treat it as a prolonged type of crisis that we need to keep on digging and doing stuff. So let me show you 2 or maybe 3 examples of things that we have done in the past, why the ECCM committee has been active and what we have done. And let's see how that has translated and moved into large-scale Dutch programs and what kind of questions we will tackle there. So if you look at the ECCM, let's say, portfolio or field of study, what we need to tackle are questions concerning energy transition that we have just discussed in the earlier session. And also, as Richard van der Sanden rightly said at the start of this meeting, it is about the energy transition and it is also about the raw materials, the feedstock, and all stuff that we currently use our fossil materials for. So it's an energy transition, but also a materials transition. And both of these aspects, you will recognize those in the research programs that we have started in the Netherlands and also in collaborations with programs internationally in Europe, with the UK, with the USA. So even though this might be a little bit of a Dutch focus, of course, these programs are connected to international endeavors in Germany, in Europe, Germany, UK, USA, etc. So don't treat this as a little stamp in Western Europe. It's not what we are. So, as already mentioned by Richard just in the earlier session, the ECCM committee has established and worked hard to get a research program funded by the National Science Foundation, partly and partly by industry, to establish new academic positions, permanent, hopefully, positions, so not PhDs or postdoc positions, but permanent tenure track positions in universities to further boost this field of research. As we had observed that this field of electrochemistry, but also the other fields, reactor engineering, process integration, energy economics, all of that stuff had been on the decline maybe a little bit. So these tenure track positions are there, about 7 of them spread around the country, to give this field a new boost and also a permanent boost. So as I said, not just solve the crisis within a year and then relax and go back down to business as usual, but establish these tenure track researchers who will stay in position, as we hope, for the next decades or so. That's the purpose. The other 2 examples, that I will probably talk a little bit more about. The first one is the Release Consortium, which is a consortium established, or maybe as I should say, granted with a 13 million subsidy last year, December, in the Netherlands. And Emmo Meijer already alluded to this Groen Vermogen NL, or the ability to go for green growth in the Netherlands, which is a huge industrial consortium with knowledge institutes of about €500 million, if we dream, to boost hydrogen and green chemistry and the manufacturing industry. And I brought just one slide for that. So let's have a look quickly at that release program. So what we identified for this program, which is a cross-cutting thing across, I need to do this from the top of my head, maybe 7 universities in the Netherlands, 4 higher schools of vocational education, sort of professional engineering schools, and about 20 to 25 companies and public organizations, governments, local governments. So it's a large consortium, 13 million euros roughly. And we are going to look at one of the key issues, which is large-scale storage of energy, to go through this energy transition. And one of the solutions, one of them for large-scale long-term storage, seems to be storage in molecules. And for doing that, you need some kind of electrochemical processes. So if you look at the, let's say, general, let's say, framework or architecture of the release program, you will recognize 5 distinct research lines. And these 5 distinct research lines, 3 of them deal with a particular or a specific technology. As you can see, number 3, the yellow one, talks about cost-effective hydrogen production. The second horizontal line, we study hydrocarbon production through electrochemical reduction of CO2. And the third technology-oriented line looks at scalable flow batteries. And each of these 3 technologies, some are immature, some are more mature, solve part of that large-scale storage puzzle. And depending on their TRL level or the maturity of these technologies, for example, the hydrogen research line, hydrogen production is more mature. So in order to scale up and speed up the rollout of electrolyzers in industry for storage, but also for feedstock production, we will not only look at improving, let's say, cell efficiencies, but in particular in this research line, in this research program, we will look at better system integration of hydrolysis in the industry or in energy systems. So it's a combination of high TRL level research with economics. And that also explains the overlap with the 2 vertical research lines. The line on CO2 conversion, for example, a key question there is electrical CO2 conversion, electrochemical is still quite immature. We can do it at a lab scale. So we need to scale up there, go for bigger pieces of equipment, roll out, scale up, do some piloting. And what we are also specifically looking for in this program, in release, is the question or the challenge to integrate the CO2 capture from air part, or from stacks first, but then from air, to integrate the capture with the conversion step. So it's really a matter of process integration. It's a field, a discipline that we have been known for in the Netherlands for quite some time, for quite a couple of decades, maybe even. And now we need to, bring that back up again, just like we more or less lost a bit of ground on electrochemistry. Or maybe the whole world lost it a bit. And the third research line on technologies on scalable flow batteries. Flow batteries are also part of that solution to large-scale storage. And what we will study here is how we can use these flow batteries and where we can use them, for example, in the built environment for these, let's say, semi-large-scale storage of energy. And questions that we will solve here are about safety, stability, and sustainability of these flow batteries, especially when you want to position them in field labs or in local neighborhoods or whatever. You need to think about also that interaction with not necessarily industrial people. The 2 vertical lines will provide that integration because we believe in the ECCM community, and I'm sure worldwide, but what we really stress in the ECCM community is that we can only solve this huge issue, this huge challenge of moving away from fossil fuels by connecting all of these different disciplines and by connecting all of the different researchers and industry. So those 2 vertical lines are probably an example of connecting technologies, but also connecting to different disciplines and fields. The first research line on advanced and robust electrode and membranes really talks about, and researchers creating better electrodes, better membranes, doing the fundamental material science to make sure we create stuff that operates under harsh conditions. And the other vertical line, they talk to social scientists, or they talk to economists, they talk to ethics of technology people. So researchers in that line will focus on, you could say the non-technical questions, but I don't really like that. I would say they focus on the socio-technical questions that on the one hand would steer technological development, and on the other hand would provide solutions for example, market problems or public acceptance problems or communication challenges, scientific communication challenges. So that's let's say the key framework of the release program. It encompasses about 19 PhD students, 5 postdoc positions on the let's say scientific side. And we have also managed and made a couple of industry quite enthusiastic to support this proposal. And here you can see the logos of those industries who are involved. And those stars on the Dutch map show where we will implement the technologies or the premature technologies, or where we will find data in a couple of particular industrial regions or sectors in the Netherlands that are pretty prominent in this ECCM endeavor. Finally, before I move back to the moderator and hoping I will hear him, this is a slide that shows again those industrial regions. Tata Steel in the north, there's Rotterdam with all the petrochemical industries in the southwest, there's Groningen in the north part of the Netherlands, who is bringing lots of electricity to shore and converting that hopefully to hydrogen. In the south of the Netherlands is Chemelot, who do many more things like green chemistry on the larger molecules, if you will. So this huge national consortium that we are now proposing, and we are urging our minister to support it in whatever which way, will include all of these regions, will include all knowledge institutes in the Netherlands, will include governments, will include probably every man and his dog, if you want to phrase it a little bit more mundane. And we will also look at the human capital agenda, which talks about educating the new workforce. Because if we move to these new kinds of industries and new pieces of equipment, we need to also change our workforce. Well, having said that, I will hand over back to the moderator and am open for a couple of questions.
All right. Paulien Herder. Paulien, thank you very much for your presentation. A couple of questions. 8 questions are filled in via Mentimeter. You can do so as well if you like. Menti.com and use the code 660497. We will not ask you all 8 questions, but Paulien, I will pick 2.
No.
First one, the program seems to be mostly focused on technology. Is there also a role for social sciences?
Yes, there is. I think the person who asked the question refers to the release program. Mm-hmm. So that research line 2, the right-hand vertical program, is actually all about social sciences. So you will find philosophers there, economists, public management types of researchers. So they will do social science and they will ask social scientific questions and also hopefully solve them. But they will use technology development as their case studies. So yes, indeed. So it might look a little bit like, it might be 20%, but in fact it's more because there are more PhD students on that side of the program.
Yeah, but it's really promising. And then another question about our government. It has shifted towards mission-oriented innovation. How will this affect the mission of ECCM?
I think the shift of this government, so I'm talking from this top sector perspective, government is stimulating innovation and they are subsidizing innovation and speeding it all up. And as of last year, roughly, they said, let's not just focus on technology and innovation only, but let's put them in this larger framework of mission. So where do we want to go to actually? And I believe, I hope, that ECCM has also been part of the inspiration for doing that. And of course, there are many, many international developments that also talk about mission-driven innovation. But I think that what ECCM has accomplished in the past 2, 3, 4, 5 years is sort of a startup, the first initial idea to do this mission-driven. If you look at the first ideas of ECCM, it was all about what do we actually need? We don't need to push a kind of technology. No, we want to move away from the C atom. We want to move away from fossil fuels. And an instrument to do that might be the development of hydrogen. It might be technology for CO2 reduction. So it fits perfectly with the mission-driven innovation agendas of the government. And I think, not too modest if we say that, I think as ECCM community, we might be a bit of a front runner even for them.
So the government needs ECCM and its partners to roll out these technology and these developing technologies. What is then the main challenge for ECCM? Is it what you just described in your previous answer, that we should continue in focusing on this, or is there another hurdle, another challenge to take?
I think, well, the biggest scientific challenge is it's pretty hard, to just pinpoint one because there are many. But I think as an overarching answer, I might say that what we, I think, are actually good at, extremely good at in the Netherlands is this systems integration. So connecting the different disciplines, working in a really interdisciplinary fashion as researchers among each other, and also connecting that to the industry. So that Groen Vermogen NL, the green growth in the Netherlands proposal, is really about connecting industries, high-tech, chemistry and energy, connecting them to the innovation, connecting them to researchers and universities, but also to the local education programs for university education, but also for the vocational education. So it's really broad and encompassing, and I think that is what makes very often the Dutch research landscape very strong and maybe a unique selling point compared to other countries, or so we hope.
I can hear by the sound of your voice that you are a very proud Dutch professor in doing so. Thank you very much, Paulien Herder. Thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
All right. And then I would like to invite Richard van der Zande back on stage. Richard, for people who are just joining us, you're the chairman of the ECCM committee. Of course, you opened this conference at the beginning of this afternoon with us, with Emmo Meijer here. Now we are at the second part. We are zooming in on the national initiatives. Just a wonderful story from Paulien Herder. Very promising what she's doing in Delft. But there are more promising stories, and you need to explain a bit about what we're going to do next, the tenure tracks.
Yes, the tenure tracks are, of course, let's say, you could say the professors of the future. And that has everything to do with, let's say, ECCM is also looking at strengthening the knowledge base. And it was actually more or less, and also I think Paulien Herder already alluded to that, there was a decline in electrochemistry. And so there needs to be a boost. And what the Dutch Science Foundation did, together with, I would say, 3 companies, this is Tata Steel, Nourion and Shell, they actually built a program in which 6 tenure trackers were actually appointed. And what we're going to see next is 6 pitches of these tenure trackers and what they are going to do in the framework of electrochemical conversion and materials. And I'm looking forward to it. So maybe we can give Lars Kiewidt the stage.
That's the first one. Okay, let's look at the first pitch.
Well, thanks for tuning in. Welcome to my pitch. I am Lars Kiewidt, a future assistant professor at Wageningen University, and I want to develop sustainable conversions for a circular bio-based economy. And in the next few minutes, I'd like to show you what that has to do with electrocatalysis and what challenges we are facing in the development of these sustainable conversions. So what is the bio-based economy? In the bio-based economy, we use renewable biomass to produce products that we use every day, like chemicals or adhesives or coatings. And the nice feature about biomass is that it is a large source of renewable carbon. And it is abundantly available in the form of carbohydrates and lignin in the side streams of the agricultural and food processing industry. But to convert these carbohydrates and the lignin molecules into the desired target molecules, we need sustainable conversions. And that's where electrocatalysis comes into play. Because with electrocatalysis, we can use renewable electrons to drive the desired chemical reactions. And to understand one of the main challenges we have in the development of these conversions, we take a look at the key part of every electrocatalytic conversion, the membrane electrode assembly. Because it is in this electrocatalysts where the chemical reactions occur, and next to it there is transport of ions, of electrons, but also mass transport of the feedstock and the product molecules. And one major difference between the biomass molecules and the molecules we currently use in the chemical industry is the size. So bio-based molecules like this carbohydrate chain here are really large. So the question is, how should we design these electrocatalysts in terms of material, but also architecture, pore size, and porosity to successfully convert these bio-based molecules. And this is not an easy task because we need to fulfill several requirements simultaneously, like a large surface area, fast mass transport, and a high conductivity. And therefore, I will apply multiscale modeling to understand the underlying structure-transport relations and combine that knowledge with material synthesis to create electrocatalysts that are really tailored for the conversion of bio-based molecules. And I'm really excited to dive into this research in the coming years and also the future. Thank you for watching. Have a good day. Goodbye.
Thank you, Lars Kiewidt from the Wageningen University on biomass. Then we go to the second pitch. Before we go to the second pitch, I will introduce the speaker after that. That's again a national initiative which will be explained here on stage. Guido Mul is professor photocatalytic synthesis at the University of Twente, and he will speak right after the second pitch, which is given by Péres-Fortez from the Delft University.
My name is Péres-Fortez, and the title of my project is Addressing the Multi-Scale Challenge of Electrochemical Conversion Implementation. The project will be developed at Delft University of Technology. What is a multi-scale challenge? On the image for a research project, time scale is plotted versus length scale. Our research work is focused on the engineering box. We will go from the electrochemical device and process scale up to the market and system scale. Renewable sources need from flexible power grid management, and CO2 utilization processes have the potential to decrease CO2 emissions and fossil fuel use. Based on both, in our work we propose two types of plants. One, Power-to-X plants, where the surplus renewable electricity is converted into heat, fuels, chemicals, and materials. And two, Power-to-X to power plants, where the synthesized fuel can be converted back into electricity. At the core of our system, we have the direct CO2 electrochemical conversion. Decentralized and centralized configurations are possible. Therefore, the question is what the best configuration for CO2 electrochemical conversion is. Via our process scale analysis, we will assess the trade-offs between the economies of number of the electrochemical device and the economies of scale of the downstream technologies. Via our system scale analysis, we will consider CO2 capture and sources as main feedstock of our system. Downstream the electrochemical system, we will consider a storage and distribution dimension of the synthesized project. The impact of policies and social acceptance we will consider as uncertainties. Therefore, via process modeling, we will assess the techno-economic impact of scaling into the plant. Via the mathematical modeling of the supply chain, we will elucidate the infrastructure needs, and the combination of both, or the optimization of both, of process and system, we will be able to answer the required questions. We will see that we will see on the screen that there is a list of relevant output data. We also see that these output data require from relevant input data, and therefore, with reliable data and modeling, we will be able to identify a range of technical and economic conditions that could constitute the business model of our electrochemical system. The project starts in November 2020 and has a duration of 5 years, so please stay tuned for the updates.
Okay, thank you very much, Joost, for the introduction already. What I will talk about is ECCM and fundamental studies. I will nitpick a few examples to give you an impression of what can be done with very fundamental research tools to understand electrochemical processes on the surfaces of electrodes. This is a slide that basically shows you the overall goals of this research. And so one of the initiatives that is currently performed in the Netherlands is E2CB, Electrons to Chemical Bonds. This is an initiative from the Delft University of Technology in the framework of a perspective program. And the key word here is electrosynthesis. So from very abundant and natural resources, simple molecules to convert those into fuels and chemicals. And in particular, hydrogen is, of course, very interesting to electrochemically produce. And in relation to this, you see an example on the right. This is a compression technology, also based on electrochemistry, from low pressure to high pressure hydrogen. And this is, among others, developed by Hyatt in the Arnhem region. So what is done in the fundamental arena to further improve and understand electrochemical processes? You see here a couple of technologies. Basically, you could also say DFT. So modeling is a technology that people are using nowadays to calculate energies and transitions in energy when a molecule is converted from one intermediate to the next. This is an example from the TU Berlin, from the group of Peter Strasser. And what you also see is that besides the chemical transformations, also the structure of the electrodes can be modeled and understood on the atomic level. More zooming out to a cell design that is on the right, you see a couple of images where mass transfer modeling is very important. And the porosity, for example, how that influences the performance of a gas diffusion cell, which is required to get very high current densities. That's also part of fundamental research programs. So what you see here is how do we get this, say, surface compositions? How do we know what they look like? And here you see two examples of spectroscopies. On the left, you see infrared spectroscopy, which can be done in a specific configuration. I've mentioned here a couple of names of researchers from the Netherlands that are active in this field, including ourselves. And Raman spectroscopy you see on the right. I won't go into detail, of course, in the interpretation, but you see various peaks come and go if you change the electrochemical potential of the electrode, and that really explains what kind of chemical transformations you could expect. What you see here is on a sort of larger scale, so not really on the molecular scale on the surface of electrodes, but what can also be done is using fluorescent methodologies and particle imaging techniques to really show that there's a lot of flow patterns near membrane surfaces and in between electrode membrane voids if you apply an electrochemical potential. So there's a lot of information coming out of these studies, obviously, to really understand the mass transfer behavior and by that lower the resistance of the overall cells for electrochemical conversions, as I alluded to previously. And this is an example of one of my colleagues at the University of Twente, Rob Lammertink. What you see here is, of course, every electrochemical process also involves the formation of bubbles. Now I want you to pay close attention to the end of the movie. You will see a burst of little bubbles which influences the current and that you see developing as well. If I press the button now, on the right figure, you see the current, and then when you look carefully at the image, you see the bubble growing. This is actually on the side of the void where the electrolyte is. Now the bubble comes on the surface, it detaches, and you saw a lot of small bubbles bursting out once this bigger bubble released from the surface, and immediately you saw a step change decrease in the current density. The way we explain that is more or less in the cartoon. So little bubbles are attracted by the smaller one, and thereby a lot of surface is kept available for electrochemical transformations. Again, at the University of Twente, I'm a little bit biased here, I have to admit, but we have a lot of expertise in understanding bubble dynamics on all kinds of surfaces in the group of Professor Lohse, and he is also developing these methodologies and imaging techniques to understand the bubble dynamics in more detail. Then, to zoom out again a little bit into the gas diffusion systems, there is a lot of efforts now going on in understanding how you should actually prepare these gas diffusion layers. And I want to pay your attention to the left top figure here, where you see that polymers are usually grown together as a glue with the particles on the surface of these electrodes, and partially covering the particles. And of course, you can imagine that has an effect on the performance as well. So understanding what the ink does to the morphology of these particles is ongoing research as well. And then these gas diffusion layers are constructed and held in cells that you see over there. The fuel cell store cells, that's the blue little cell that you see. For only a few €100, you can buy a complete fuel cell that you see over there. Another way of making gas diffusion and very effective interfaces is by these hollow fiber tubes that we're developing in-house. And also there we create a very effective interface between gas, the electrode, and the electrolyte. To finish off, I would like to highlight a few examples of 2 programs of NWO, which one is the Solar to Fuel program, and the other is the Materials for Sustainability program. And besides looking at electrochemical cells and designs, you could also take renewable electricity and generate a plasma, for example. This is work that is being done at DIFR, and a lot of effort goes into understanding plasma catalysis, again, converting stable molecules into high value added chemicals and fuels. Another sort of solar conversion technology that is being developed, you see here. Here nanotechnology also comes into play, and with nanotechnology and clean room techniques, you can, for example, make very well-defined porous structures. You see this image with the holes in a silicon divider. And when you do that, you can prevent, for example, very strong pH gradients between a left and a right compartment of a photoelectrochemical cell. And you see by the color intensity that if you don't have these holes, there is a lot of difference between the top and the bottom next to the provider. And the divider, when it's perforated, leads to way lower gradients, and that is, of course, beneficial for the cell efficiency. Another area of research in the solar to fuel and materials for sustainability programs involves organic molecules. This is work done, for example, at the UvA and the University of Leiden, where redox mediators are being developed, and also light-absorbing molecules inspired by nature, bio-inspired molecules and conversion systems. And I'd like to close off with a real solar to fuel device. This is being developed at the Leuven University. And here you see the idea is not take a liquid, so not a liquid electrolyte, but using actually water from air. And this water can then be split into hydrogen and oxygen. And this is, of course, a very simple and all-solid device, which limits the hindrance of all kinds of mass transfer limitations. And Richard this morning also notified me that also at DIFR, a slightly different confirmation, but also a gas phase water vapor converter is being developed. This Leuven example is now close to commercialization, and so everybody could buy a panel, install it at home, and produce their own hydrogen. This was what I wanted to present. I'm well aware that, of course, not all the fundamental studies that are going on in the Netherlands I could address, but at least this should have given you a flavor of the possibilities and what is being achieved now in the Dutch community.
Guido Mul, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Let's continue. A lot of questions are already sent into our Mentimeter system, but the first one is then for me. You say in a few years, every consumer who owns a roof can have their own hydrogen plant built on their roof. What will be the cost of such a system? Will it be compared to normal solar panels?
Well, I don't know the exact price of these panels that the Leuven University is developing, but of course there is more technology on the backside of this panel than there is on a regular solar panel.
It's more complicated. So,
it's more complicated, so I expect the price to be higher than a regular solar panel. But the price should be lower than if you would combine a solar panel and buy a separate electrolyzer. And by unification or integration of the two functions, I guess they can save a considerable amount of money.
Okay, let's take a look at the questions that are being asked. If you have a question for Guido or for our next speakers, you can send them in. Go to menti.com on your tablet or your mobile phone, and then type in 660497. Let's take a look at the questions. Is there sufficient funding for fundamental research at this moment? Is there ever enough funding?
Well, as a university professor, I would, of course, the more the better. But I think the ECCM initiative at least has helped to establish quite some funding for this field, for re-establishing a community in the field of electrochemical conversion and materials. And as Paulien already alluded to, especially those 6 tenure track fellows that will start shortly at the Dutch universities certainly bring in a lot of new fundamental research as well.
That's great. Then another question. What are timelines for development and implementation of the technologies that you have shown? In how many years we can expect things to become a normal part of our lives?
Yeah, well, the last example that I showed, this hydrogen panel, I've heard that they are trying to get this into production. So I think this is going to be available, say, in a year or a few years.
Yeah, that's great.
Also, electrochemical cells to convert CO2 into fuels or chemicals such as ethylene. I think they're also close to commercialization. So in essence, they are not very different from existing hydrogen fuel cells and electrolyzers. So I believe that will not be too far out in the future.
Okay, let's take a bit longer at the building environment. Which breakthroughs are needed for applications at the building environment? Which scientific breakthroughs do you need?
Well, I think the scientific breakthroughs are not so. They have been made, I think.
Okay. It's more the next phase.
It's the next phase. I think it's bringing down the cost. So now I heard in Germany, actually, if you want to put solar panels on your roof, you need to also implement some kind of storage facility. And of course, Tesla has these batteries. There's also a battery company in the Netherlands, Super B. That's all based on lithium-ion batteries. Tesla, of course, the battery that is in cars. But perhaps also hydrogen could play a role here, but the electrolyzer is still quite expensive.
Yeah, because of the grid cannot cope if everyone uses solar, so you have to have your own home battery, whether it's lithium or hydrogen
or maybe a redox flow battery. Indeed, yeah, there has to be a storage solution. We cannot unlimited implement solar panels on our roofs without at some point, hurting the network.
Okay, we have 1 minute left, so time for one or maybe two questions. You can read them as well if you want. Pick one or two questions from the audience.
I saw something about the infrastructure, I think, to do fundamental research. I think, again, with the coming of these tenure track fellows, I think they can also invest. And I think a lot of new tools can be implemented at the Dutch universities. I didn't mention, for example, X-ray methodologies. I know one of the tenure trackers that is still to come will probably explain this in some more detail. How can the status of the Netherlands... Oh, now it disappeared again, the question.
It was about the field of the Netherlands. Maybe to go to the next phase, are there any companies interested yet? Because what you want is you need to scale up.
Exactly. Yeah, there is a lot of public-private collaborations. So this E2CB is also part of. Yeah, that's an example of such a public-private collaboration. I think Release that Paulien alluded to is as well. Yeah. Even in the ECCM committee, we have very important chemical companies for the Netherlands that really think about how to transfer themselves from, for example, Shell, from an oil-based to a more renewable-based company. So definitely there's a lot of interest from the industry in helping to develop these technologies.
Great. Guido Mul, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
All right, we continue the program here. We have 4 more pitches to go, 4 more inspiring tenure trackers. Let's go to the next one, which is given by Rick Mom.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rick Mom, and I will soon start my ECCM tenure track at Leiden University. My passion is to understand electrochemistry from a very fundamental perspective. I want to understand what electrocatalysis looks like at the level of atoms and molecules. In these 3 short minutes, I would like to show you how I intend to develop new spectroscopic techniques in order to get this atomic scale insight, and how this might help to improve fuel cells and electrolyzers. Like for most electrocatalytic devices, the chemistry in fuel cells and electrolyzers is centered around the 1 or 2 nanometer around the electrode surface. This is where catalysis happens, this is where electrode degradation happens, and both of these are influenced by the surface structure of the electrode and the near surface structure of the electrolyte. So, if we want to improve the performance of our device, we need to improve this interface structure. And this is a challenge, because this interface structure is dynamic. Basically, if we design a very intricate electrode design, we are not sure that it doesn't change under operating conditions. Similarly, we can add electrolyte components, but who's to say that they actually go to the surface during operation? So, if we want to pursue a very rational approach in designing electrocatalysts, we need to understand what changes from preparation to operation conditions. Now, this is the challenge that I've set myself and that I want to solve using spectroscopy. In the next few years, I want to develop new spectroscopic techniques for X-ray photoelectron spectroscopy, X-ray absorption spectroscopy, and Raman spectroscopy. And what these new techniques will have in common is that they specifically detect only the 1 or 2 nanometer around the electrode surface, and that they do so under operating conditions. Together, these techniques will give an operando insight into the elemental composition of the electrode-electrolyte interface, both which elements are present and how much, what the oxidation state is of these elements, how they are bound together, and what their local electrostatic potential is. So with this very complete picture of the electrochemical interface, I aim to understand what the fundamental reasons are behind structure activity stability trends. Basically, I want to extract which components of the electrode-electrolyte interface are essential for performance. And based on this, I want to develop rational design guidelines for catalyst innovation. Now, this is a very general strategy that I want to apply not only to fuel cells and electrolyzers, but to many other systems as well in the future, hopefully in collaboration with many of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rick Mom, and good luck with all the research that you are doing. And we go to the next track, the next pitch, but before we do that, I'll introduce the speaker after that, which will be here on my place in the studio. And the next presentation, so after the pitch, will be given by Earl Goetheer. He's Principal Scientist, Process Technology at TNO. TNO is a research institute based in the Netherlands. So that's after the next pitch, which will be given by Amanda Garcia.
Good morning, my name is Amanda Garcia, and I am one of the ECCM tenure track working in the field of renewable energy technology. And I will develop my research program at the University of Amsterdam. We know that large-scale electrification of the energy and chemistry sector is a crucial condition for the transition from a society based on fossil fuels to a sustainable society based on renewable building blocks. I'm originally from Brazil, where I obtained my PhD degree, and over the last 15 years, my life has revolved around the field of energy. I've worked on novel materials and technologies, tried to improve energy efficiency and catalytic activity of many different reactions. I also worked in France and in the Netherlands, and because of that broad experience, I could build up expertise in different fields and techniques, such as electrocatalysis, material science, and spectroscopic techniques. To help the chemical sector, my proposal is to use chemical building blocks like CO2, CO, and nitrogen compounds as feedstock and combine them with organic molecules in electrochemical device to produce important chemicals like synthetic fuels, carboxylic acid, and others. In my opinion, basic and fundamental information is missing to bring electrosynthesis to the real-world applicability. My vision for this contribution is to perform fundamental studies to understand the chemical transformations at atomic and mechanistic level using in situ spectroscopic techniques like infrared, Raman, and mass spectrometry. In collaboration with industrial partners, my findings will be translated into cell design and potential scale-up technology. One of the examples of the reactions that I want to study is the electrocarboxylation reaction. I want to understand how to incorporate CO2 into an organic molecule. My motivation for this is first because carboxylic acid have a huge industrial application, and there are many partners that are interested in using electrochemistry as approach to produce those kind of molecules. Also, the literature is not clear how this reaction takes place. I want to use the spectroscopic techniques to understand the mechanism of the reaction. Once you understand how the reaction is taking place, then our partners, they can reach high yield and high conversion in order to obtain the target molecules. This work brings responsible innovation in a way that it requires multiple alliances. This will involve scientific institutions and business across the domains of energy and chemical industry. This innovation will help in the electrification of the industry, and as a consequence, this will bring us to a CO2 neutral society. And this is what the ECCM wants together with the Dutch government. Thank you.
It's great to be here. A little bit strange, but still great to be here. My name is Earl Goetheer, and I have the best job ever because I work at TNO and at the TU Delft. And that basically means that I can work together with my colleagues from TNO towards implementation in 2030, and 1 day per week I can work with students for the future after 2030. And you already saw with this tenure track professors, there's a lot of enthusiasm in that, and that's really great to hear that. Because we are faced with an enormous challenge. And somebody said crisis, but I don't believe in crisis. I think it's really going to be an opportunity. So on the picture which you have seen, I took this picture from Andrés Stankiewicz, and for the people who know Andrés Stankiewicz, you know as well the story that's related to that. So if you see this picture, this is related to how basically chemical engineering was done in the 17th century. And basically, if you look nowadays, if you look at the things that are already there, it's basically exactly the same things what they people were doing 400, 500 years ago. So the cool thing now is we have now different tricks. I'm a chemical engineer. I was trained in building these kind of refineries. That was my whole education. Unfortunately, I never built one. We have to build new type of refineries for it. So what the TU Delft mentioned, the e-refinery as a nice example. Because that's where we're going towards. So if you now drive in Rotterdam and you see the beautiful refineries, it's always nice to drive over there and see these kind of nice refineries. Yeah, think about how it will look like over 30 years. We need to go to zero emission. We need to go away from fossil fuel. So basically, what do we have then as tools? There's a very limited amount of options. Now, clear, biomass is a clear option. But we need to have as well other means to produce chemicals. Our materials we still need. We still need electrons for that. So electrons together with carbon, that will be really the key for it. So I don't believe, for instance, that we should decarbonize the chemical industry. I think you should really think about recarbonizing the chemical industry by getting the carbon dioxide or another carbon source back into the loop again for it. So why is that so important for the Netherlands? Now, if you just look at the Netherlands and take Antwerp with it and the North Rhine-Westphalia area, it's a small part of Europe, a large amount of our chemicals are coming from. So it is really key to see how we can get this industry alive as well in 2030, and 2040 and 2050, and how to do that. Now, electrochemistry could be really one of these tools for it. Now, what kind of things can we think about? Now, these are basically my 4 topics. I believe in hydrogen. Hydrogen, people have been talking about before. Now, hydrogen is a key intermediate. If I have hydrogen, I can do a lot of different things for that. Second thing is, and I saw the nice presentation of Amanda Garcia 2 seconds ago, talking about CO2 reduction. Again, getting the carbon back into chemicals for it. Nitrogen reduction, ammonia synthesis, of course. Yeah, that is one of the key chemicals which we need for the future as well. How to do that? And power to chemicals. And then you can think about all kinds of chemicals, specialty chemicals, for instance. But not all of these things have the same horizon. Not all these things have the same, let's say, implementation time. Hydrogen is basically here and now. We can already build megawatt-scale electrolyzers. We can do that. We can demonstrate that. If we talk about CO2 reduction, that's a little bit further away. This has to do with the business cases, which is a little bit more difficult, but it will come. Nitrogen reduction, the holy grail. So especially for the young people, the PhD students and the tenure track people watching it, if you would like to get a certain prize in Scandinavia, now that's the thing for to research for, an alternative for Haber-Bosch process, of course. And the fourth thing is power to chemicals. Now, power to chemicals, talk about specialty chemicals. Now, that's something which you can already do today. Let's say the motivation to go in that direction has nothing to do with electricity use, but has more to do that you can make a cheaper product with less waste. For it. That's basically the driving force for it. Now, if you look at these four different topics, they all have got something in common. So this is a picture which I used from Tom Berduini, one of my colleagues at the TU Delft, and he really nicely explained it with, in this case, for CO2 reduction, but it's quite similar for all these different topics, is that you really understand that you have to work on different scales. So it's not only that you have to look at things that's happening at the nanometer scale, but all the way up to systems at square kilometer scale. And that's really the challenge which we are facing for. How to translate these results coming from the small scale to the implementation in large scale. And that is something where, I was really happy to hear one of the speakers as well saying it, this is something where the Netherlands could be really good at. Trying to think about the system levels, how to integrate all those kind of things. Now, it's good that you know something about the fundamental aspects, good that you know something about the materials, but you have to apply it and get it into a system for it. And a system is not only a reactor, of course. It's connected to basically downstream process and connected to the feed preparation, as an example. But it's as well connected, basically, to sector coupling, as an example. You need to get electrons in and make chemicals. These are really what I call sector coupling. And that's really going to be key, getting the sector coupling in it as well. Now, if you then zoom into the Netherlands, this is my version of the Netherlands for it. This is a nice picture coming from the ECCM, and you could see all kinds of hotspots in there. But if you go look a little bit better at it, and then you can see now, for instance, that in the northern part of the Netherlands, people are going very aggressive in a positive sense towards hydrogen. The TKI New Gas, they came up with a total of 24 projects, which are currently going on hydrogen, going to large-scale hydrogen even, and a lot of these projects are connected to the northern part of the Netherlands. For it. And why is this? So what is now really one of the key differentiators? Now is that basically the companies, the research institutes, they all work together in a common goal. Again, something where the Netherlands is really good at. I think the Dutch polderen really helps in this case as well. If you then look a little bit at Rotterdam, the Rotterdam area, where there's basically at this moment in time is a fuel harbor. If you drive to it, like I said already, refineries, beautiful. But they have to change as well. So to help with that is the Field Lab Rotterdam, the Field Lab Industrial Electrification will play a critical role. In the Field Lab Industrial Electrification, we will work with several parties to really demonstrate things what are possible. And we'll come back to that later as well. And then the third region, which is where a lot of things are happening, is the region of Geleen. Gemmelot. I was there this week, and I did long time ago, I did my internship over there. And I see how the whole site has been changed. It's tremendous in the last 20 years. But it will change even more for it. So also over there, you have organizations like Brightlands trying to get the community around it and trying to really get the value chain in it. Because we can't do it on our own. So the key towards implementation is this collaborative action, this multidisciplinary action. I can't stress this enough for it. And going a little bit more into the example of the Field Lab Rotterdam. I saw as well that Richard van der Zanden had this picture as well in it. But these kind of things are really important. Now, why is it important? Is because you would like to get things out of the lab and into the field. Now, what does it mean? Is that you should be able to demonstrate things. You have to go over the TRL levels for it. And a key element is this demonstration. Demonstration that it works not only in the lab, but works with industrial feedstock. Demonstrated that it can work under flexible dynamic conditions. That's not straight on for it. These are the things which are really key. And in the Field Lab Industrial Electrification, together with the Voltegem program, which is basically a program where TNO collaborates with a lot of different companies and institutes, but as well with e-refinery, which is much more focused on around the TU Delft, we tried really to demonstrate several things in it. Now, one is related to basically power to heat, but as well power to electricity, power to chemicals will be demonstrated over there. We will show at that location that we can capture CO2 and convert it directly into chemicals. So really this kind of capture integrated conversion. Now these kind of things makes me really quite enthusiastic to demonstrate at that location with the industrial community around it for it. And so what has been just recently announced is that the Dutch government will support this initiative with some serious amount of money to really get this industrial electrification lab going on, to really go into the next year, that you can go to this field lab Rotterdam, that you can see how these things can work, and you can really smell it for yourself for it, and really get this whole value chain going on. So with this is my story about implementation, and I hope it was clear for you that I'm a strong believer of collaboration, getting the knowledge together, and that's really the way how to go forward and think about, not about crisis, but think about possibilities for that. So thank you all.
Thank you very much, Earl Goetheer. Well, first question then, about the smell. How does industrial electrification smell like?
As an engineer, it smells good.
But it doesn't smell like the burn of fossil fuels.
Oh, no, that is one of the key differences. If you go to a refinery, and I said, I love it. I see this refinery.
You said it a lot of times in your presentation.
But I grew up in Zeeland, in Zeeuws-Vlaanderen. They have the Dow Chemicals. And my father was working over there, and every time I was looking, because you can see it for miles ahead, and I was looking at the flares. Yeah. And I could see, things are going wrong. There's an issue there. Now, those kind of things we don't want to have. And it's a totally different way of going to be how a plant will look like. And this radical change, can't come directly. This will go by steps. And in my opinion, the first step what needs to be done is really look on how to, let's say, have a renewable intermediates in it. So don't think about end products, but think about products which can make renewable at the feed chains of other products.
But that's a really different approach, a different perspective. So no more flares, no more smell of gas, but also no more emissions.
That's the whole goal about it. And not only no more emissions, but trying to be way more precise in waste. Of course, no matter which process you will have, you will produce some waste. Yeah. That's an utopia to think you go to zero. But the challenge will be is to get it as low as possible.
Yeah. And to reuse the waste, because an interesting example, what's happening in Terneuzen at Dow Chemical, there's of course, what is waste for Dow can be used.
That's a nice example. Now, for instance, in Dow, next 20 kilometers to the south, you have ArcelorMittal. It's a steel company. They have abundant amount of blast furnace gas, basically CO and hydrogen. Now you can use it directly in making all kinds of chemicals out of it, but you can also make an electrochemical process out of that and go from that blast furnace gas to ethylene. Yeah. And that is, of course, extremely cool if you can make directly a molecule like ethylene, because that is basically a starting point from so many chemicals for it.
Okay, let's continue on this one, because if you would have a crystal ball, and you talked about the year 2030 a lot, that's of course the year that the tenure trackers will be, will have risen in academia and are maybe professor. That's also the year that we have to get a lot of climate goals in the Netherlands and in the rest of the world. So how will the world look like? How will the chemical world look like in 2030?
That's really an interesting question. And I have to differentiate between the Netherlands and the rest of Europe. Netherlands, I always talk about in Dutch, the spruitjeschuur. Netherlands is a very small thing here.
How would you translate that to English?
I don't know. I'm not going to do that. They can look it up at Google Translate, perhaps. No, but the thing is, the Netherlands will have an issue by 2030 still. The amount of renewable electricity which we need to basically electrify the Dutch industry will not be available. It's just an utopia, because we want to drive our cars on electricity. Yeah. We would like to use power to heat sources for our building environment. So, but I think especially after 2030, then you will see this large-scale implementation, because then you have renewable electricity. That's different in other countries. So if you now go in the Middle East, they can produce renewable electricity at a cost of 2.5 cents the kilowatt hour. Yeah. That's amazing. That is much cheaper than just burning coal and in it. So. Basically, what some people already said, the end of the Stone Age was not there because of the end of stones. No. The end of the fossil fuel period will not because there's not enough fossil, but we have just better
cleaner and cheaper alternatives available. All right, so then take a look at the questions from the audience. We still have a few minutes left.
I can't read it.
What are we saying? What is your vision on how the chemical industry looks like in 2030? No, well, that's already a question I answered. How do you see recarbonizing industry from life cycle to circular economy point of view?
That's really one of the really nice question, Fred. Because when you talk about recarbonization, it sounds very nice. We take CO2 and then we make, for instance, new carbon out of it. But you have to think what will happen with your products which you make. Suppose I will make from CO2, I will make methanol, as an example, with hydrogen. Then people will use methanol and will be burned, and then it goes into the air. So that's why it is so important that you can close the loops. And Paulien gave a nice example within the Realize project, where we are going to study basically how to do that, how to close the cycle, how to capture CO2 from the air and connect it with hydrogen, for instance, and make products, or using electricity for it. And so one thing which I really can't stress enough is if you want to develop a novel technology, take into account the life cycle analysis, think about the broad picture, don't zoom in only your technology, because then you will miss opportunities.
And also don't zoom in on geographical areas, because that's what the next question is about. Why are the geographical areas so separated in respect to technologies? Being the Netherlands such a small country, why shouldn't we actually all work together? We have a few chemistry clusters in the Netherlands. You mentioned Gemmelot is in the south. In the southwest, we have Dow in Terneuzen. We have also MTech. It's all based on the... it's not centered in the Netherlands. Why is that actually?
Oh, no, so there's a lot of historical reasons why you have this kind of position in the map, and it's going back to the 50s and 60s about our industrial policy. But the thing is why don't we work all together? Now, it's a simple reason why you should not do that. Because I believe in competition. So it's not a bad idea to have clusters, a little bit of competition with each other to come up with better suggestions for it. Netherlands is a very small country. That's really true. But we have some main key things which is in our favor. Now, you have seen professors like Paulien and Guido Mul. We have top-notch scientists here. Compared to Europe, really outstanding scientists. We get brilliant new tenure track students in, professors in. So we have the people. The second thing is do we have the infrastructure around it? Now, if you go, for instance, to Rotterdam, there's a harbor. We can transport all kinds of materials over there. Brilliant. We will have this asset over 2050.
And will Rotterdam be the hydrogen capital, the hydrogen harbor of the world by 2050, for example?
Oh, that is a good... you're asking a lot of questions about this crystal ball, and I would not take any bets on it, so I'm not going to make any wager for it. But one of the things, of course, what is going to happen is you put a lot of windmills on the North Sea. Now, one of the things is where comes all this electricity onto shore. And you can think about Rotterdam as a place where all this electricity comes on shore, and then
convert it into hydrogen to store it in the empty
gas fields. That would be but we have to really be honest with each other. And there are a lot of stories like the Netherlands, we can put windmills and solar panels. If I look at the current heavy industries, take that into account, it would be quasi impossible that the Netherlands will be self-sufficient related to renewable electricity. We have to import it from it, and then Rotterdam Harbor is still a good location.
This is an interesting point of view, actually, because Marjan Minnesma at the beginning of the program said, well, it's very easy to do. If all house owners have 9 solar panels on their roof, if we have in every city a few windmills, then it can be done. And what you're saying, if you compare all those energy absorbing industries, like the steel industry, it cannot be done.
This is really very difficult. And then you have to make a choice. Are we still prepared to have this kind of heavy industries in the Netherlands? If you say this could be done at a different location, then you get a different discussion. But with the current heavy industries, it's easy to calculate. It will be very difficult to get enough renewable electricity.
Of course, we can make the decision to close Tata Steel, and then they just make more steel in India. But but it's on a global perspective, it would be wrong. It's better to make Tata Steel in the Netherlands green.
Yeah, indeed. And if I see the colleagues from Tata Steel, they are really active on making their whole steel making process basically renewable or as
renewable as possible.
As possible. So they have the Hizarna process, which is a beautiful way of making steel, completely different, where you make pure CO2 at a high temperature. Now, what is more nice than to couple it to solid oxide electrolyzers and transform the CO2 which they produce at this high temperature directly into syngas, where they can make fuels out of that, and KLM can fly on it, perhaps.
It's great.
That's what we
I can see you get excited about
that's a really cool topic.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Earl Goetheer, thank you very much. And we have two more wonderful stories left about the next generation, about what's coming up. Two more tenor tracks to go. We go to tenor track number 5, and it's given by Pedro Groszewicz.
Hello, my name is Pedro Groszewicz, and I will lead the ECCM project Electroceramics for a CO2-neutral energy cycle. This project will be carried on at the TU Delft, and in the course of the next 5 years, it will provide new concepts for the materials required in the electrochemical conversion of the tomorrow's society. The electrification of chemical industry is a paramount step towards a CO2-neutral future. To realize this vision, electrochemical reactors are required, which are both capable of synthesizing feedstock for the industry, as well as efficiently converting green fuels. If these electrochemical reactors are powered by renewable sources like the sun and the wind, large-scale implementation of batteries will be required to counterbalance the intermittence of renewable sources. These batteries should be safe, inexpensive, and rely on widely available chemicals. Furthermore, the integration of renewable sources to the grid demands the repeated conversion between direct and alternated sources, which poses high demands to the electronic components capable of this function. These should be efficient, small, and environmentally friendly. Electroceramics can help meet these demands and will play a key role in the electrification of chemical plants. Electroceramics are core materials in solid oxide cells for electrochemical conversion, in batteries for short-term storage of electricity, as well as in high-power electronics required for the electrification of industry and transportation. My group's research will focus on the development of electroceramics on these 3 levels. On the level of electrochemical conversion, we will study new oxygen ion conductors to enable low-temperature solid-state oxide cells and hence cover a more efficient way to generate energy from fuels. On the level of electrochemical storage, we will study room-temperature fluoride-ion batteries, aiming at unleashing the high energy density predicted for them as a potential grid storage. As third, on the level of the DC-AC inverter, my research group will deal with lead-free antiferroelectrics to enable environmentally friendly high-power electronics. This project will heavily rely on the application and development of in situ and in operando characterization techniques. In this way, materials can be analyzed under working conditions, and deeper understanding of the structure property relations governing their function will be achieved. This knowledge will guide the development of new concepts in electroceramic materials, which will enable the electrification of chemical industry and help realize a CO2-neutral society.
Thank you very much. Time to go to the last tenor tracker then. It's Marco Altomare.
Hi, my name is Marco Altomare from the University of Twente. My project is based on solid-state duetting, which is the heat-induced transformation of thin metal films into arrangements of metal particles. Duetting has been for a long time perceived as detrimental, for example, in microelectronics. Its occurrence leads to ruptures of metal line contacts, causing device failure. However, from a different point of view, duetting can be used as a powerful nanostructuring tool. Consider, for example, that the thinner the metal film and the lower the duetting temperature. Also, when controlling simple parameters, for example, the film initial thickness, one can control precisely the particle size, loading and distribution. And when starting from pre-butter substrates, duetting can occur orderly. So the project envisions the use of solid-state duetting to produce catalytic metal nanoparticles on electrode supports. We intend to explore the wetting on conductive metal oxide single crystalline substrates, for example, niobium-doped strontium titanate. Here, due to epitaxial interactions, the result of the wetting will be faceted metal particles, and one can tune or design both low or high index planes. Also, when starting from metal bilayers, the result of the wetting can be faceted alloy crystals. So by this strategy, we plan to produce faceted platinum and platinum alloy nanocrystals on conductive single crystalline substrates and explore at a fundamental level their performance for the electrochemical hydrogenation of pyrolysis oil components. We also intend to tackle the electron scalability, this by a templated wetting strategy. For this, we will use highly defined titanium dioxide nanocavity array surfaces, which can be formed on titanium plates or meshes by simple electrochemical anodization. And this approach is scalable, and such surfaces can be made conductive by thermal reduction or by cathodization. On such surfaces, the wetting occurs orderly, and one can control the particle size and composition, as we demonstrated in recent work, for example, starting from metal bilayers of an adequate thickness and composition. By this approach, we plan to produce electroreduction catalysts composed of platinum copper or palladium copper nanoalloys for the electrochemical reduction of nitrate in surface water. Finally, we also intend to explore the direct formation of noble metal mercury nanoamalgams at the electrode surface. As we demonstrated in recent work, these, for example, in the case of the wetted gold nanoparticles, can be done by a solar light-driven process carried out in mercury ion-contaminated waters. This simultaneously allows for mercury removal from the contaminated water and its incorporation upon reduction into the noble metal. So by this approach, we want to produce palladium mercury nanoalloys in view of their anticipated high performance for the electrochemical evolution of hydrogen peroxide. So I hope you found the project interesting, and I thank you for listening.
We're back in the studio here for our final thoughts, for the reflection, and also some announcements. And here with me on stage is Richard van der Sande, chairman of the ECCM committee. We're going to talk the last minute of this program about what will happen next year, what will happen next, when will we ever meet again. But before we do that, let's ask a question to you at home, to our wonderful audience who was, you were with us this whole afternoon, and we really appreciate it. Next question for you, and think about it for a few moments. What does ECCM absolutely need to accomplish in the next 5 years? So it's an open question. You can fill out anything you want to, share it with us here in studio. And then the question for you, we will get back with the results soon, but take a few moments to fill out what ECCM absolutely need to accomplish in the next 5 years. But Richard, then let's stick to the next year first. What will happen next year, 2020, 2021?
Yeah, the next year, of course, with the very good committee which we have, with representations from academia, from the companies, but also supported, I should say, by the wonderful secretaries who also made available this event which we have here. Because it was not a light task to switch from something which is real to something which is virtual, what we are doing now. But we have laid out a program for the next year, and that's very ambitious again. For instance, I would like to mention the initiative, which is a joint German-Dutch initiative, and which has actually been funded by the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Policy with 2.5 million to actually, let's say, promote the collaboration. And hopefully we will end up also with an even larger program than that. And in this winter, this year, this will form a basis for a call. And actually, I'm looking forward to that, because that actually connects two important countries, I think, the Netherlands and Germany, in this joint endeavor of the electrochemical conversion and materials. And the other thing is also, of course, the report is from 2017, And so the committee is also updating this and shaping it more into, let's say, a kind of a roadmap type of report, so that we have, you know, what you have with a roadmap is, of course, milestones and that kind of stuff.
A roadmap for the future, because the world has changed rapidly since 2017, not only because of the current situation of the corona pandemic, but also because of all the innovations which have been done also in the ECCM field.
And of course we inspire ourselves there also by that Groeifonds proposal, which is the obvious connection of innovating us out of this corona crisis, of course.
The growth fund, to translate it to English. Let's see if what the audience wants, what our viewers would like to see, what does ECCM absolutely need to accomplish in the next 5 years. Already 24 things sent in. You can still send in your thoughts on this topic. Work in collaborations with other countries. Well, you're going to do that then with Germany already in the next year. But of course, the world is bigger than the Netherlands and Germany together. But together we are bigger than we are alone. So that's the first step. I see a collaboration with Germany, Belgium, and Denmark. Established collaboration with industry. I see a collaboration everywhere. But also place electrochemistry on the political agenda. It's also a great task for you, and then to translate the scientific language into language that our politicians able to understand.
Of course, there we need to actually act together. So again, companies and the academia, but also, let's say, the polytechnic schools, etc. We need to actually build up this workforce. And have the innovations and the pilots and the demonstrators going on, so that we can actually accelerate this energy transition. And that's a tremendous endeavor, and I think the committee and all the people surrounding the committee are working hard on that. And I think we have, in that sense, also very fertile ground with the the Ministry of Economic Affairs. So we have very good connections with them. We actually act together with them also.
I also read on the screen bridge academia and industry. There's also a nice topic, of course, to do so together with the government. That's the triple helix.
And of course, these what we saw by Earl Goetheer presented as an example, because usually this is attached to also research and development programs, and that's actually what we aim for.
Okay, well, great. Thanks for all the things you sent in. And back to the slides, because we have a few more things that we would like to mention about. Well, what will happen next year? There's also the round table meeting. You told us a bit about it, but
it's basically. Of course, you could say again the Groeifonds proposal is actually also, you could say, pre-work for that. But what we are aiming for is to get an ECCM roundtable to really get it, you know, on the agendas of everybody. And that's basically necessary if we want to accelerate this energy transition and actually lower our CO2, let's say, emissions quickly. We need to have, let's say, this industry together with academia working on solutions, fast solutions, hydrogen first, after that the more advanced electrochemical approaches. The other thing is, I think also what is essential is that we start thinking also about, okay, how are we going to earn our money? And that's of course not always academia who's thinking about this, but of course it's an essential ingredient also, and that's why we also are going to basically make a strong connection with the high-tech industry. That's one of the aims also of ECCM. That's also, let's say, one of the founding fathers, of course, the high-tech. Let's say, top sector.
And that's the collaboration again, because you need it to make the scale-up possible, and therefore you need the high-tech industry involved.
Yes, also.
Okay. Really great. And then also involving high schools and universities of applied sciences to get the new fresh students working on those topics.
Yeah, because of course it will also be jobs which basically are linked to installing electrolyzers on the tubing, etc. So it's not only, let's say, research and let's say academia, but it's also of course this workforce which is basically having a new industry we are building basically.
Yeah, it's also applied research, but also applied work, which has to be done.
Right, and that's actually what is also on our agenda, to actually attract this and to couple this again to the Groeifonds proposal also.
Yeah, great. We have two more questions for you at home or at your office or wherever you're watching us. The next question is, what are the most inspiring examples of ECCM-related initiatives abroad? For example, research programs, test facilities, demo or pilot plants. Give us a few of the examples, things that, well, which you inspired by. Share it with us, with the rest of the community. Then I will ask Richard next to me, not only to answer this question, but if you look back to what we had here this afternoon, we had a few wonderful keynotes here at the stage. Also, Germany, USA, China on video. We had a lot of pitches here. Just to summarize it all, what are your key thoughts on it?
It's a vibrating community, I would say, and it's connecting towards the global developments. I think you have seen by the three speakers in the first part that this is really a global development. We need to actually work with all of us actually hard on this. And as is also shown by, I would say, the tenure track, but also the field labs and the hydro hubs, that it is also, let's say, coming together there. And that's actually one of the ideas of the ECCM, of course, to facilitate this and to make sure that we actually are well prepared for the future.
And you did facilitate it even under these strange circumstances. You said, well, normally it's real and now it's virtual. Do you think the mission of making virtual also real is accomplished today?
Yes, I think to some extent, of course, I think what we have tried by still organizing this event is, of course, keeping the community alive and also reporting back to the community what steps are taken actually in the past and what we are going to do in the future also. So I think it's very important to keep these events and to get together.
Thank you. Let's take a final look at the results. What are the most inspiring examples? A few examples are getting into the screen. H2 powered power buses in Iceland. A program in Japan, LOHC work, Tesla research programs, the Copernicus program in Germany, Olympic projects in Japan to be demonstrated, the power to chemical power, Australia, the green ammonia production.
Yes. Yeah, so that's green ammonia, of course, from hydrogen from electrolysis, binding it to nitrogen and creating ammonia, as was actually shown by Marjan.
Yeah. Yep. Well, a lot of synergy and hydrogen partnerships in the EU. All right. Final question for you to answer in Mentimeter. The ECCM committee is updating its roadmap. It's already you shown us a few things about it. What should be top priorities the committee should keep in mind regarding that roadmap? We talked about what will happen next year. The roadmap has also a lot of milestones for the coming decade. It's an open question again for the people in the audience to answer it. Scale up is the first answer that it's getting through in Mentimeter. Can you say something about that? How are you going to make?
Of course, that's like it was in the original let's say advice. Also, we have noticed we first, of course, have to promote the scale up of hydrogen production. That's for sure. But, you know, after the scale-up of hydrogen, actually also the direct conversion or the advanced electrochemistry of base molecules to more complex molecules is going to be essential too. So that's basically within, let's say, the advisory board. But we will have a fresh look at this and how we actually can structure this better in the report and actually make clear goals, clear milestones. So that's certainly going to be part of the
roadmap. Let's take a look at a few other responses. Include CO2 capture technologies, basic research, ammonia is also given out here.
And international collaboration, of course, that's also going to be a place there because the environment is changing. More countries are going towards that direction, and so international collaboration is certainly.
Convert electricity to chemicals, of course. Regulations, that's the role that politicians play.
Right. So that's one of the ideas of the round table discussion, of course, to actually get The Hague involved and make sure that it is on the agenda.
And you also get then the high-tech companies involved,
Right,
I presume.
right. High-tech, but also the chemical and the energy companies.
Okay.
Basically,
it's
the
a big
three.
round table then.
Yes, it's a big round table.
Okay.
Yes.
One of the few things you will hopefully establish the coming years. But then there's only one more thing to discuss. How do we evolve from this? Will there be a conference next year?
Yes, and I'm happy to announce that indeed next year, 25th of June, so around the same time as this year, we will have, let's say, the next ECCM conference. And it will be in The Hague.
Hopefully in The Hague,
Hopefully, yes.
if everything works out fine. So that's the save the date then, the 25th of June next year.
Next year.
You will be there?
Yes, I will be there.
All of you guys who joined us this afternoon are, of course, invited to join us then the 25th of June, hopefully in The Hague, for the next ECCM conference.
Right.
Final words, final thoughts?
Now, I think it was a very good decision to actually go virtual, because I'm very excited by the way we actually what we saw today. The good presentations, we saw the new tenure trackers, the pitches. We saw a very nice overview of all the, let's say, national initiatives which have been basically started under the umbrella of the ECCM initiative. So I'm very proud, and I think it was a very good decision to actually go virtual.
Richard
and thanks
van
for
der
you
Zanden.
also.
Of course,
for your perfect moderation.
Richard van der Zanden, thank you very much. All of you guys, thanks for watching. All our speakers, our pitchers, thank you for joining us here today, and hopefully see you next year. Bye-bye.